Chapter 9:11. Hurry! Push the catapults back and get out of here. Don't let them all be destroyed. An Arab officer quickly reacted and began to push the catapults away from the battlefield. Although the Arab catapults were large and heavy, each one had 7 or 8 large wheels attached to it, allowing it to move smoothly. But how could Chenburang allow them to successfully withdraw at a time like this? Boom boom boom. A dense rain of stones rained down from the sky. In just a few waves of attacks, 80% of the catapult formation that the Arabs had built up with great difficulty had been destroyed. Those steel balls that had been placed next to the catapults to make them easier to throw had now become the Arabs' most fatal flaw. The entire catapult formation was aflame. Damn it! In the blink of an eye, the large metal balls shot toward the first defense line of the Tang people vanished, the sea of fire and smoke vanishing, leaving behind only a few embers. In the rear of the army, Abu Muslim and Ziyad both grimaced at this sight. The advantage they had built up earlier had been instantly obliterated. Fahada, kill that Tang people general on the walls. Abu Muslim's eyes darkened as he suddenly ordered. The Arab catapult squads had destroyed many sturdy cities in the past, but they had never been destroyed by enemy catapults and burned by their own kerosene. Abu Muslim could tell at a glance that the crux of the problem lay with that young Tang people general on the walls of Talas. Yes. A fully armored Arab general strode out from behind Abu Muslim, his voice loud and clear. Crick crick. With the twang of a bowstring, the Arab commander called Fahada gripped an ivory bow that was half a man's height in his left hand and a metal arrow more than 5 feet long in his right. The arrowhead was as red as blood, like a shining ruby, and he aimed it at Chenburang. The moment the bowstring was drawn, all the light in a radius of 100 feet began to twist and gather on the arrow in Fahada's hand. The ruby arrowhead exuded an extremely dangerous light. Boom! There was a massive boom, and it was like a clap of thunder had exploded in the sky. Before anyone could react, the arrow in the hand of the famed Arab archer, Fahada, had shot through the air like a lightning bolt toward the top of the city walls. This arrow moved with incredible speed. At the start, it was still in Fahada's hand, but a moment later, it was already on the walls of Talas, only a few zhang from Chenburang, who was commanding the army. Buzz! Seeing the sudden appearance of this arrow, Chenburang's expression changed. Although his ears had already heard the arrow, his body could not keep up. His opponent was much stronger than him. A saint martial archer. This thought flashed through Chenburang's mind, and his face turned as white as paper. He was a member of the Kunwa training camp's deflecting blade manner and had extremely high attainments in the art of war and archery. In his hands, the catapults could display a terrifying might that no other officer could hope to match. Even though Chenburang was skilled in battle tactics, his cultivation wasn't as high as it seemed. If the Arabs sent a saint martial expert to deal with him, someone of Chenburang's cultivation level would be doomed. It's over. This was the only thought left in Chenburang's mind. Bang! As Chenburang closed his eyes to await death, there was a flash of light, and an invisible barrier of energy erupted from behind Chenburang and engulfed him. There was an earth-shattering explosion as Fahada's destructive arrow hit the chi shield. It was as if it had hit a layer of hard steel. Clang! The steel clanged and the shockwave spread in all directions. The ruby-like arrowhead and the arrow shaft smashed into the chi shield and turned to dust. Protector General! Hearing the commotion behind him, Chenburang opened his eyes and saw Anshi Protector General Gao Xianji slowly walking toward him. He gave a long sigh of relief. Continue to command. With me here, there's no need to worry. Gao Xianji's voice resounded in his ear as he casually took a few steps forward and placed Chenburang behind him. In the fierce winds, Gao Xianji's eyes exploded with a sharp light as he looked past the void to Abu Muslim and the famous Arab archer behind him. Abu Muslim also seemed to sense something, and his body slightly leaned forward as he looked at Gao Xianji on the walls. These two foes who had been fighting at Talas for more than 2 months were now exuding an intense desire to fight. "Milord, should we bring a few more generals?" Ziyad took 2 steps forward at an appropriate time and said, "There's no need. With Gao Xianji here, we can't kill him." Abu Muslim waved his hand and rejected Ziyad's suggestion. The catapult formation has already been destroyed. There's no need to worry about it. Inform the soldiers on the front line to increase the intensity of the attacks. Before sunset, I want them to completely tear apart the Tang people's western defense line and destroy it. No matter what, we must thoroughly defeat the Tang dynasty. Yes, my lord. Ziyad understood and quickly left to deliver Abu Muslim's order. This battle was of the utmost importance, the decisive battle between Arabia and the Tang dynasty. A messenger alone would not be able to convey Abu Muslim's will, which was why Ziyad had personally taken action. In front of the gates of Talas, between the two defense lines with Chen Burang's steel catapults engaged, Daluan Ruozan and Abu Muslim's strategies swiftly crumbled. The catapults that Daluan Ruozan had hidden behind the hills and the catapults that Abu Muslim had hidden in the rear of the army had all been destroyed in a few short moments. The flames and smoke on the battlefield vanished, and the situation of the more than 100,000 Chishi reinforcements was instantly reversed. Fire! Without the slightest hesitation, Chen Bin stood on his transport carriage and ordered the ballista teams around him to wildly fire at the Arab army. The first defense line was in a rather perilous situation. The kerosene attacks of the Arabs had rendered Chen Bin's ballista teams useless, allowing many of the Arab cavalry to reach the walls of the first defense line. All the steel walls and infantry shields were being battered by a furious storm of attacks, the sounds of collisions filling the ears of the soldiers. All the Arab cavalry at the very front were doing their utmost to break through the defense line. On the other side of the defense line, all the infantry were clenching their teeth and doing their utmost to hold on. Hold! Don't let them get close. Stop them. This is a military order. All the infantry were bulging with muscles, the veins on their foreheads bulging, and even their faces were red from exertion. It was at this moment that the attack of Chen Bin's ballista army arrived. Boom! 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 A dense barrage of ballista bolts once more appeared on the battlefield like the scythe of the Grim Reaper. Boom! An Arab horseman charging at the infantry shields was too slow to react, and just as he was about to charge at the shields again, a pitch-black ballista bolt pierced through his chest. The enormous force of the bolt lifted him off his horse and sent him crashing into a second Arab horseman, a third, a fourth. A single ballista bolt had instantly killed 7 or 8 fully armored Arab horsemen, and this was only the beginning. Swish, swish, swish. One ballista bolt after another howled through the air, each one claiming at least 6 Arab horsemen. In just one volley, 7 or 8,000 Arab cavalry had been killed. The second volley followed, a third volley, and so on and so forth. The Arabs were dying at an astonishing rate, and the steel defense line was littered with corpses of men and horses, their blood flowing freely across the ground. But the Arabs had gone completely berserk, no longer caring about casualties. When the two sides clashed in close combat, the Arabs were said to be at their most ferocious, terrifying, and invincible. As long as they could kill their foes, they would use their ferocious assaults to crush them, and the Arabs would not care about casualties. It was precisely this sort of courage and fearlessness that made the Arabs invincible from the Tsong Mountains all the way to the Red Sea. Tens of thousands of Arab cavalry had savage expressions on their faces as they charged toward the first defense line. Squelch! An Arab horseman raised his spear and threw it. The spear flew past the heavy shields of the infantry and into the dense ranks of the Tang army. Caught off guard, several Tang dynasty infantry were impaled by the spear and nailed to the ground. Spear after spear was thrown, and the Tang dynasty's Chishi reinforcements rapidly began to suffer casualties. Not only that, even under the dual assault of the beehives and ballistae, many Arabs were still able to use the corpses to scale the walls and fly over the tall shields. Swish, swish, swish. Behind the infantry shields, the regular soldiers of greater and lesser valor stabbed forward with their spears. These spears were like agile snakes, piercing through the chinks in the armor of the Arab soldiers and hanging onto their spears. The power of the pikemen of greater and lesser valor was on full display at this moment. In terms of penetrating armor, no one in the western regions could compare to them. But not even this could stop the Arabs. Fight! Kill them all! An Arab soldier stepped over the corpses and climbed over the steel wall, his scimitar in both hands as he began to slaughter the Tang soldiers. 1, 2, 3. Countless Arab soldiers rushed forward, heedless of their own lives as they charged at the first defense line. One after another, neither the beehives nor the ballistae could stop them. Chapter 9:12. Release. Su Kui commanded the remaining ballista soldiers to work with the beehives to fire at the oncoming Western Turkic and Uzun cavalry. Daluan Ruozen's catapults had had far more impact than expected, especially on the ballista army led by Su Kui. All of them were the main targets of the Daluan Ruozen's catapults. The successive volleys of catapults had destroyed 40 to 50 ballista carts, and many more had been damaged by the catapults and were still in the process of being repaired. Although Chen Burang's catapults had succeeded in destroying the ballista army, the Western Turks and Uzun cavalry had managed to get to the second defense line. Su Kui could only seize this moment to shoot down the enemy and stop the Uzun and Western Turkic assault. Boom, boom, boom. Volley after volley of ballista bolts howled through the air. Behind the second defense line, Tibetan and Turkic horsemen fell one after another, their corpses kicking up clouds of dust as they fell to the ground. Translated by Hypersheep 325. But the killing power of Su Kui's attack was far from being as great as it seemed. Daluan Ruozen and Dawissili had each of their cavalry equipped with a round shield. These Western Turkic and Uzun soldiers were hiding behind the round shields and on the backs of their horses. As a result, the actual lethality of the ballista bolts was reduced by several times. Often, a ballista bolt would only kill 4 or 5 Western Turkic and Uzun cavalry, 5 or 6 at most. But to the 120,000 Uzun and Western Turkic cavalry, this was a drop in the ocean. At the very least, it was not enough to heavily injure them. Ready! His vigorous and heavy voice resounded over the eastern battlefield like a great bell. Clang! Li Sai unsheathed his signature Tibetan sword from his Fergana steed. As he unsheathed his sword, the 5,000 Wushang cavalry swiftly assembled behind him. The 5,000 cavalry were armed to the teeth, wearing meteoric metal armor and wielding wood steel swords. Whether it was in terms of spirit, energy, or physical strength, they were all at their peak. They could be said to be the strongest cavalry in the history of the Central Plains. More importantly, these 5,000 cavalry had a tacit understanding and discipline that no other cavalry could compare to. Everyone hear my order. Prepare to attack. The clattering of swords being unsheathed resounded through the second defense line. At this moment, Li Sai and the Wushang cavalry were far from the only ones preparing to attack. Chen Burang, Zhuang Jingping, Qi Weisi, and the other elites of Deflecting Blade Manor, as well as the other officers of the Chishi reinforcements and the hired cavalry of the western regions, had arranged themselves into square formations, their eyes focused forward as they prepared for battle. This was not the first time that the Deflecting Blade Manor and the mercenaries of the western regions had worked together with Li Sai in the Battle of Talas, and both sides were ready to attack at any moment. Tens of thousands of wolves surged forward. Dawissili had brought countless wolves with him, and these wolves came wave after wave as if there was no end to them. As soon as the beehives were cleared, another would come howling in. In the sky, the vultures began to cry like babies as they swooped down once more. But most alarming of all were the more than 100,000 charging Western Turkic and Uzun cavalry. Kill! The Turkic and Uzun cavalry roared as they picked up speed. Neither the attacks of the beehives nor the volley of ballista bolts could stop them. 20 zhang. 10 zhang. Charge! Seeing that the Uzun and Western Turks were about to charge, Li Sai immediately pointed his sword and charged out from behind the steel walls like a bolt of lightning. Boom! At almost the same time, the earth quaked as the 5,000 Wushang cavalry followed Li Sai like 5,000 unsheathed blades. The momentum of this charge was enough to shake the heavens and shake the earth. Not even 50,000 could match the momentum of this charge. Kill! At the same time, Chen Burang, Zhuang Jingping, Qi Weisi, and the other Chishi reinforcements also charged forward. Tens of thousands of cavalry roared as they charged at incredible speed toward the Western Turks and Uzun. This time, behind the steel defense line on the west, Wang Chong had adopted a completely different strategy from the first defense line. More than 40,000 Tang Dynasty cavalry charged out from behind the defense line, holding nothing back. In the face of these Western Turks and Uzun cavalry, the Tang dynasty did not choose to retreat, but to charge forward. In the Central Plains, the Tang dynasty had no reason to retreat, whether it was the cavalry of the Western Turkic Khaganate or the cavalry of the Uzun. Rumble. It was as if two prehistoric beasts had collided heavily. Behind the second line of defense, both sides did not hesitate at all, nor did they turn around at all. Rumble. In a flash, thousands of Western Turks and Uzun cavalry fell to the hooves of the 5,000 Wushang cavalry. Before the edge of the Wuzi steel swords, the armor that the Western Turks and Uzun were so proud of was like paper. In a flash, swathes of Wushang steel had been cut down. The 5,000 Wushang cavalry cut through the crowd like they were vegetables, none of them able to last one round. Rumble. In a single charge, the elite cavalry of the Western Turks and Uzun had been crushed, throwing the army into chaos. Charge. Those who offend my Tang dynasty will be executed no matter how far away they are. Kill them all. Provoked by Li Sai and his Wushang cavalry, Sun Jiming, Zhuang Jingping, Qi Weisi, and the other elites of deflecting blade manner felt their blood rush to their heads, and they led the cavalry behind them in a charge. Boom boom boom. Defensive halos, charging halos, offensive halos, strength halos, all of them exploded like bamboo shoots after the rain. Halos clashed with halos and warhorses collided with warhorses as the two sides clashed. Sun Jiming, Zhuang Jingping, and Qi Weisi each led tens of thousands of soldiers in a courageous charge. But unlike ordinary cavalry, Sun Jiming and the others were not simply fighting with the Turks and Tibetans, but working with Li Sai to widen their gains. Sun Jiming's cavalry followed behind Li Sai in an arc, instantly crashing into the flank of the 8,000 Uzun cavalry. Moreover, they had chosen the spot where the 8,000 soldiers were most disorderly. Be it in terms of timing or positioning, this wave of assault was impeccable. Hong hong hong. The sound of horses colliding against each other could be heard, sabers flashing and horses neighing could be heard. The army led by Sun Jiming had arrived at just the right moment. With just a single charge, the 8,000 soldiers were torn apart. The two armies that had been thrown into disarray by Li Sai's charge were once more thrown into disarray by Sun Jiming's assault. At the same time, Zhuang Jingping, Qi Weisi, Gao Feng, Nye Yan, and the other members of deflecting blade manner worked together, charging through the path Li Sai had opened up to the left and right flanks. Whether it was Zhuang Jingping, Qi Weisi, Gao Feng, or Nye Yan, they had all received Wang Chong's education in the art of war in deflecting blade manner. Not only that, when Wang Chong was not present, they had also learned from each other under Wang Chong's instructions. Sun Jiming had once given a public lecture in deflecting blade manner on what he had learned from Wang Chong and his own understanding of cavalry tactics, imparting them to everyone. Under the guidance of the future #1 cavalryman of Great Tang, regardless of whether it was Zhuang Jingping, Qi Weisi, Gao Feng, Nye Yan, or the others, their understanding of cavalry and tactics far surpassed that of ordinary people. Their strength might not be very strong, but their ability to sense and execute battle tactics was extremely shocking. Boom boom boom. The bone-chilling galloping of horses could be heard from the second defense line as wave after wave of Great Tang cavalry, led by the men of deflecting blade manner, charged forward like a tide, sweeping away everything in its path. The 40,000 Tang dynasty cavalry instantly scattered the 60,000 Uzun and Western Turkic cavalry. Even Dawusili, Daluan Ruozan, Hushu Wizong, and Dusong Mangpoj couldn't help but widen their eyes at this sight. Who are these people? When did the Tang dynasty have so many formidable individuals? Even the Qixi Protectorate has so many famous generals. Dawusili was an experienced and knowledgeable person, and he had originally thought that he would only be dealing with Gao Xianji and Wang Chong, as well as a few other famous generals of the Anxi Protectorate army. He had never imagined that Wang Chong would have so many formidable tactical generals under his command. They didn't seem to be very strong, but their ability to grasp opportunities in battle was simply unbelievable. Even standing on the hill, Dawusili could feel the threat of this unsheathed edge. The thousands of cavalry led by the junior generals of the Tang dynasty were like sharp swords, repeatedly thrusting in and out. Even the experienced and battle-hardened elite soldiers that Duwissely and Daluin Ruozen had brought were being scattered. One could easily imagine the sharpness of their edge. "I don't know," Daluin Ruozen finally said, his brow creased. Duwissely was not the only one surprised. In the past, he had only known that Wang Chong was a master of strategy, tactics, and commanding, but he had no idea that even Wang Chong's subordinates were so formidable. With such subordinates, Wang Chong was like a tiger that had grown wings. As for their own weaknesses, they weren't that important at a time like this. "I heard that the Tang dynasty had 3 specialized military training camps, all of them established at the behest of the Tang dynasty's holy emperor. In the Kunwa training camp, there's a deflecting blade manor that was established by the current Qixi Protector General. That deflecting blade manor absorbed quite a few students from the Kunwa training camp, so it's probably them." Daluin Ruozen's hair flew in the wind as he spoke. Chapter 913. Li Sai, Sun Jiming, Gao Feng, Nian. Countless Qixi reinforcements were madly charging in front of the second defense line. But these 40,000-some cavalry were far from enough to stop the charge of the more than 100,000 Uzun and Western Turkic elites. Soldiers are valued for quality, not quantity. This battle was taking place at Talas, to the west of the Tsong Mountains, several thousand li away. If news of this arduous expedition didn't leak out, it was impossible to bring too many soldiers. Thus, even though they didn't seem to have brought many soldiers, Daluin Ruozen only 70,000 and Duwissely 40,000 some, they were all elites among elites. The more than 100,000 Western Turkic and Uzun elites continued to charge forward like an unending tide against the 40,000 Tang dynasty soldiers. Even the charge of the Wushang cavalry under Li Sai's command was far from enough to stop them. Some of the Western Turkic and Uzun cavalry even circled around Li Sai and Sun Jiming to join Duwissely's wolf pack in charging at the second defense line. And the ballista army led by Su Kui was their primary target. Nay! A warhorse neighed as a Western Turkic horseman galloped over the piles of wolf corpses in front of the second defense line, leaping over the heavy shields of the infantry to land in the rear of the defense line. Swish, swish, swish. Countless sabers, spears, swords, and halberds stabbed at the horseman. The moment the Western Turkic horseman landed, his body was riddled with holes, blood gushing out of his wounds. He was a corpse that couldn't be more dead. But this also served as a symbolic signal. Once the first person charged through the defense line and into the army, the Turks and Tibetans would begin to whinnied and leap into the air, joining the ranks of the Tibetans and Turkic cavalry. Translated by Hypersheep 325, Kill. At the same time, a crazed roar resounded over the battlefield, but it was not in the language of the Tang dynasty, but in the bloodthirsty and brutal Arabic. Although Khalid's Iron Beast army had been completely crippled by Su Bin's ballista army, Khalid's Iron Beast army had been completely crippled. Even so, the Iron Beast Corps was still very useful. They carried the corpses they found on the battlefield and even wounded warhorses, using their own bodies to block the ballista's attacks. Although the Iron Beast Corps had lost their warhorses, the Iron Beast Halo and Dark Blood Shield were still in effect and could still reduce the ballista's damage. A horseless Iron Beast army soldier, his veins bulging, picked up a large horse corpse and charged at a ballista. The huge crossbow bolt pierced through the horse's corpse and pierced through the armor on his body. However, it was deflected by his charge and shot towards the sky. Only the Arabian Empire, which lived and died in battle, could be so ferocious and fearless, using its own body to block the ballista bolts even though it clearly knew the power of the ballista bolts. The fearless bravery of the Iron Beast army had given the Arabian army an extremely valuable opportunity to fight. Tens of thousands of soldiers had fallen to the attacks of the beehives and ballistae, but tens of thousands of warhorses had also used this chance to charge up the steel walls. People were constantly pushing through the dense forest of spears, stepping over the corpses and climbing over the walls. Even when they landed on the ground and were turned into porcupines by the barrage of ballistae, they still rushed forward. Fear was nowhere to be seen on the faces of these Arabs. The more they died, the more bloody and cruel they were, the more they seemed to stimulate their will to fight. Behind the steel defense line, The mercenaries of greater and lesser valor couldn't help but widen their eyes in fear at the sight of the Arabs roaring like wild beasts, let alone the other mercenaries. In the legends of war to the west of the western regions, the Arabs were synonymous with death. Countless powers and empires had felt the terrifying and fearless will of the Arabs, and their fighting spirit had crumbled, scattering like birds and beasts on the battlefield. Their cities and countries had been destroyed by the Arabs, creating the legend of the Arabs' invincible and undefeatable existence. One wave, two waves, three waves, one wave of Arab soldiers after another surged toward the first defense line, toward the steel defense line. Hold! Get ready. Archers, get ready. In the entire battlefield, the ones who were the most solemn and calm were undoubtedly the infantry corps led by Wang Yan and Wang Fu. Row by row, they stood behind the first line of defense without moving an inch, like a rock in the middle of a river. No matter how fierce the Arabs' attacks were, no matter how fearless they were, and no matter how many times they charged, they were never able to penetrate the infantry formations led by Wang Yan and Wang Fu. In this section of the defense line, Wang Yan and Wang Fu had the highest casualty rate of any Arab. No matter how many Arabs broke through the steel walls, the heavy shields of the infantry, the hornets, and the ballistae, when they finally reached Wang Yan's infantry formations, they were all doomed to die. In the rear section of the army, the nearly 10,000 infantry had solemn expressions, and they had never even been mobilized. In this era where cavalry was king, even though the terrain of the Tang dynasty was naturally not suited to raising high-quality warhorses, nor was it dominated by cavalry, when it came to infantry, no faction in the world could compare to the Tang dynasty. The Tang dynasty had used its massive infantry armies to crush the Uzun, the Eastern and Western Turks, Goguryeo, and Mengshi all the way to the western regions. That was the era of infantry. The Tang dynasty had allowed everyone to witness the power of the infantry armies of the Central Plains, thus establishing the Tang dynasty as its current hegemon. Across the four seas, only the Great Tang could use its infantry to resist all the cavalry formations and resist the attacks of all the cavalry. Although the infantry under Wang Yan's command could not compare to cavalry in terms of charging power or mobility, in a positional battle, they were like an impenetrable fortress. When used with Wang Chang's steel defense line, they were able to display their formidable defensive capabilities to the extreme. Wind. The wind howled. Behind the first line of defense, surrounded by 4 black armored guards, Wang Yan's expression was solemn as he suddenly waved his right hand. The thousands of shield men guarding the gap in the steel walls suddenly retreated, revealing a massive path behind them. In the blink of an eye, thousands of such huge tunnels appeared behind the first defense line that had not been breached for a long time. Buzz! For a moment, the Arab soldiers behind the defense line had their minds go blank in shock at the sudden appearance of these gaps. But a moment later, thousands of Arabs roared and swung their scimitars as they charged through the gaps. The Arab cavalry behind them paid no attention to what was happening in front of them, roaring as they followed. Fire! Wang Yan's expression was resolute. He waved his right hand again, and in the next moment, there was the sound of metal clanging. The shield-bearers cooperated with the axemen behind them, and with a rumble, they once again cut off these tunnels. The gap in the first defense line was sealed up, and the Arab soldiers who had tried to charge in were like turtles in a jar. Kill. A series of battle cries shook the heavens and the earth. The moment the gap was closed, countless sabers, spears, swords, and halberds stabbed over from all directions. No matter how powerful, fierce, and valiant the Arab cavalry were, no matter how fearless they were, in the face of the vastly outnumbering Tang dynasty infantry, all of them were instantly felled into pools of blood, not even stirring up a ripple. Wind. Fire! In Wang Yan's hands, this tactic was repeated over and over again, allowing batch after batch of Arab soldiers to enter and killing them. By the time the shield-bearers closed the gap, not a single Arab horseman would be able to survive for more than a few seconds against Wang Yan's infantry formations. In Wang Yan's hands, infantry were not only used for defense, but also for offense. They could attack while defending, and defend while attacking. The 20,000-some infantry were like the most precise machine, using extreme efficiency to slaughter the charging Arab cavalry. One wave at a time, one wave at a time, one wave at a time, one wave at a time. Even the Arab cavalry were intimidated by this extreme calmness and composure. The mercenaries of the western regions who were adjacent to Wang Yan's infantry formations were also unwittingly affected and began to work with Wang Yan's infantry formations to fend off the Arab charge. This was also the toughest area of the defense line. It's about time. Between the two defense lines, amidst thousands of warhorses, Wang Chong rode the white-hoofed shadow, motionless beneath the flapping banner of the Tang dynasty. As he listened to the fierce fighting on both sides, a sharp light flashed through his eyes. This battle was already reaching its most intense phase. The Arabs, Western Turks, and Uzun soldiers had all put in their full strength, and the two defense lines to the east and west were both under enormous pressure. And now, it was time for the most important part of Wang Chong's plan. Buzz! A white light brighter than the sun exploded out of Wang Chong's eyes amid the fierce winds. Rumble! The entire eastern and western battlefields began to quake. With Wang Chong at the center, a milky white halo descended from Wang Chong's body and began to expand, sweeping across the battlefield like a hurricane. The bane of the battlefield halo. As the four sides clashed and the battle intensified, Wang Chong immediately unleashed the bane of the battlefield halo. Bzz. The dazzling halos beneath the feet of the tens of thousands of Uzun, Western Turkic, and Arab cavalry began to flicker like candles in the wind. Before anyone could react, clang clang clang, the tens of thousands of war halos on the battlefield began to dim. Chapter 9:14. What's going on here? Abu Muslim, who had been sitting in the rear of the battlefield as steady as Mount Tai, shuddered and stood up from his seat, a look of extreme shock on his face for the first time. He had participated in so many wars and conquered so many countries, but he had never encountered such a thing. The auras of more than 200,000 elite Arab cavalry had been greatly weakened in a single moment. Not only that, this abrupt change had thrown the Arabs fighting at the front into chaos. The Arab cavalry at the very front, unable to react in time, were turned into sieves by the pikemen. Boom! A long ballista bolt howled through the air, instantly crossing over the heavy shields and appearing more than 20 zhang away as it shot toward the rows of Arab cavalry. Translated by Hypersheep 325 Ruhr. A soldier of the Iron Beast army roared as he grabbed the corpse of a warhorse and lunged at that thick ballista bolt. But this time, the dark blood shield and Iron Beast halo that could be used to resist the power of the crossbow bolts didn't come into effect. After the huge crossbow bolt pierced through the warhorse's corpse, it effortlessly pierced through the Iron Beast soldier's heavy armor. Then, it didn't slow down at all and dragged him into the air. Then a third, fourth. In a few short moments, the black ballista bolt had pierced through the bodies of 8 or 9 Arab horsemen and nailed the last 4 to the ground. Plush plush plush. Similar scenes were taking place all over the battlefield. Tens of thousands of ballista bolts filled the air, covering the entire battlefield. They were still firing ballista bolts, but the effect this time was completely different. Bang, bang, bang. The sound of corpses falling to the ground could be heard as the first line of defense was instantly emptied under the barrage of crossbow bolts. Release! 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 Within the ballista army, Chen Bin had a cold and aloof expression as he stood atop a transport carriage, his sword constantly swinging down. After fighting with Wang Chong for so long, Chen Bin was well aware of what had happened just now. This was an extremely rare opportunity, the perfect opportunity for the ballista army to display its might. Swish swish swish. 9,000. 10,000. 11,000. 12,000. The Arabs instantly suffered heavy casualties under the barrage of ballistae, and the number of casualties continued to rise. In this single volley, 25,000 Arab cavalry had fallen to Chen Bin's ballista army. At the same time, the Arabs were not the only ones affected. The Uzun and Western Turks on the Eastern Front had also been affected. On the Eastern Front, the Uzun and Western Turkic cavalry had relied on their overwhelming numbers to temporarily suppress Li Sai, Sun Jiming, Zhuang Jingping and Qi Weisi, But the moment Wang Chong used the bane of the battlefield, the situation immediately reversed. The Western Turks and the Uzun were in a very bad situation, and many of their soldiers were killed in the charge of the Wushang cavalry and the other Tang dynasty cavalry. What's that? What did that kid do just now? In the rear, Du Wusseli's eyes narrowed, his pupils constricting. He was just as shocked as Abu Muslim. Almost subconsciously, Du Wusseli turned to Daluan Ruozhen and Huoshu Wizong. This was Du Wusseli's first encounter with Wang Chong, but Daluan Ruozhen and Huoshu Wizong were different. If there was one person who could explain what was happening on the battlefield, it was probably Daluan Ruozhen. Great General, I also have no way of explaining this matter. Daluan Ruozhen bitterly smiled. He naturally knew what Du Wusseli was thinking, but Daluan Ruozhen also had no way of explaining this situation. Even though this was not his first time fighting with Wang Chong, there were still many mysteries about Wang Chong that he did not understand, like what was happening right now. In truth, I already encountered this sort of thing in the War of the Southwest, but it was far from being as powerful as it is now. It seems like it's not just his status in the Tang dynasty that has risen, but his strength outside of the art of war has also grown. There were far too many mysteries about Wang Chong. His art of war, his use of steel modules, the thousands of li of cement roads he had built in the Tang dynasty, and his use of that unique halo. Daluan Ruozhen had never encountered an existence as inexplicable as Wang Chong. His background and growth could be traced, but the things about him could not be explained with that. It was as if they were two completely different people. There's no other way. Perhaps only a great general can counteract this wave of influence. Daluan Ruozhen said, his eyes fixed on Du Wusseli and Huoshu Wizong. Even though he had made ample preparations for this battle, there were still some things that were beyond Daluan Ruozhen's abilities, like a battle between martial artists. Daluan Ruozhen was famed for his intelligence, strategy, so he was called the wise minister. He considered the overall situation, not the strength of a single individual. That aspect was something that top-class great generals like Du Wusseli, Huoshu Wizong, and Du Song Mengpoj had to consider. This scene had become Wang Chong's challenge to Du Wusseli and Huoshu Wizong. That's all we can do. Du Wusseli subconsciously creased his brow. As the highest commander, he normally would not lightly step onto the battlefield. Only in a few crucial moments or when the enemy great generals entered the fray would he make an exception. But the Tang dynasty had not sent any great generals into the fray. A single halo was enough to force him to break convention and enter the fray early. This made Du Wusseli very unhappy. Not only that, all halos consumed energy. In other words, they would consume the strength of Du Wusseli's forces. In the later stages of the battle, when great generals fought against great generals, this would become extremely fatal. This was also why all the commanders of the armies had tacitly agreed to not enter the fray in the early stages of the battle. But the current situation was beyond his control. If he did not enter the fray, the Western Turkic cavalry would quickly be routed by the 40,000 Tang dynasty cavalry. This was something that Du Wusseli could not allow. Buzz! Du Wusseli raised his head and straightened his back, his eyes flashing with a sharp and cold light as he took a step forward. Rumble! The moment Du Wusseli's war boots stomped on the ground, the hills trembled and a golden flame spread out from under Du Wusseli's feet. It instantly transformed into a dazzling golden halo of the Saint Martial realm, within which were several imperial crowns. These crowns were different from those of the Central Plains. These crowns were carved with images of sheep and wolves, and atop the hemispherical crown was a golden eagle spreading its wings. This was the typical crown of a Western Turkic Khagan. Bizizi. As Du Wusseli moved, golden halos began to spread from Du Wusseli's feet to cover the entire Turkic army. In a flash, Wang Chong's bane of the battlefield halo was greatly weakened. Bang! At almost the same time, Uzun Great General Huoshu Wizong took 2 steps forward and stomped down, unleashing his own war halo. Another powerful halo flew through the air like a storm, spreading beneath the feet of the tens of thousands of Uzun cavalry to resist Wang Chong's bane of the battlefield halo. The Uzun and the Western Turks were not the only ones doing the same thing. Outside the second defense line, the earth rumbled as if some enormous power had struck the ground. Abu Muslim had also moved, pitch-black halos bolstering his army and radiating to the feet of the Arab cavalry. Wang Chang's halo had mobilized the Western Turks, Uzun and Arab forces, forcing 3 elite great generals to take action at the same time. This was unprecedented in history. As expected, they've moved out. In the distance, Wang Chong and his white-hoofed shadow stood beneath the fluttering banner of the Qixi Protectorate. Not only was he not surprised by this sight, he even gave a faint smile. There were hidden schemes and open schemes. Wang Chong had used an open scheme for the first time on the battlefield, and this was his second. In order to resist the effects of the bane of the battlefield halo, Huoshu Wuzong, Duwisili, and Abu Muslim were forced to use their strongest halos to passively respond. The battle had only just begun, but the 3 highest commanders of Uzun, the Western Turks, and the Arabs were already beginning to weaken. Halos consumed energy, and the longer this battle continued, the faster Huoshu Wuzong, Duwisili, and Abu Muslim's strength would fall. If this battle continued for more than an hour, the 3 of them would fall from the peak of the Saint Martial realm. But this was completely different for Wang Chong. Although the bane of the battlefield halo consumed energy, it was so minuscule that it had almost no effect. What it consumed was the energy in the world itself. Since that's the case, I might as well fulfill your wish. Wang Chong's hair rustled in the wind as he faintly smiled and unleashed his other halo. Boom! There was another flash of light from Wang Chong's body. Right after the bane of the battlefield halo, Wang Chong's second bane of generals halo burst out of his body and engulfed the entire battlefield. Bzz. In a flash, the battlefield that had been under the control of Huoshu Wuzong, Duwisili, and Abu Muslim changed once more. The Uzun, Western Turkic, and Arab generals in the middle of the army suddenly felt their auras flicker like candlelight. In a flash, all of them had dropped an entire level. Chapter 9:15. Bastard! Seeing this scene, the expressions of the few people on the hill in the distance changed, and their eyes revealed faint anger. The appearance of Wang Chong's second halo made them feel like they had been played around with by Wang Chong. Daluan Ruozan, I suddenly understand why you want to kill him so much. Under the Golden Wolf banner, Duwisili's eyes were dark and sinister, his entire body exploding with a killing intent that caused even the air around him to twist. In just 2 exchanges of blows, before they had even truly clashed, Wang Chong had completely ignited the Celestial Wolf Great General's killing intent. If this kind of person is allowed to live, whether it's for the Uzun or the Western Turks, it will only lead to endless troubles in the future. There were not many people that a Celestial Wolf Great General like Duwisili cared about. Even a brigadier general like Agudulan was his subordinate and had been personally taught by him. From this, one could easily imagine just how high Duwisili's standards were. But even though Wang Chong had not reached the level of a brigadier general, he was enough to make Duwisili firmly remember him. Shamshak, take the Celestial Wolf Cavalry and prepare to kill the Tang people. Duwisili suddenly said. After a few moments of silence, a hoarse and sinister voice came from behind him. Yes, milord. Daluan Ruozan and Huoshu Wuzong turned their heads and realized that a Turkic general wearing the silver Celestial Wolf armor had appeared behind Duwisili at some point. His body was slender and did not leak any energy. Standing in the middle of the Celestial Wolf Cavalry, no one had noticed him. If not for Duwisili's words, no one would have noticed him. Brigadier General. A thought flashed across their minds. Daluan Ruozan and Huoshu Wuzong's eyes revealed a hint of fear. Concealing one's aura in front of a group of imperial great generals was no easy task. This alone showed that the other party possessed extraordinary abilities. Not only that, this Shamshak's aura was cold and gloomy. With one look, one could tell that he was an extremely dangerous and difficult character to deal with. Everyone listen up. The Lord has ordered us to set off. Shamask ignored the gazes of the crowd. He mounted a Turkic steed covered in spikes, his eyes bursting with a bright light. The moment he mounted his horse, his aura underwent a heaven-shaking transformation. It had been indistinct and ever-changing, but now it had become as fierce and powerful as a storm. The 10,000-strong celestial wolf cavalry trembled as they neighed in the morning sun. These top-class Turkic warhorses had been specially trained and raised, so they no longer seemed like warhorses, but a pack of wolves. Get ready! At almost the same time, Daluan Ruozan turned his head to Huoshu Wuzong. Have Huaba Senji move out as well. There's no need. I'm ready. Daluan Ruozan had barely spoken when a muscular man with the back of a tiger and the waist of a bear, clad in black and red armor, slowly rode out from the rear. His eyes were like bronze bells, his skin was a little dark, and 2 red ribbons with golden edges fluttered around his shoulders. This was the symbol of the highest commander of the Mutri Great Cavalry. Huaba Senji was one of the guards of the Uzun Empire's royal capital, the leader of the Mutri Great Cavalry, and one of Daluan Ruozan's earliest supporters. In this long expedition to Talas, Huaba Senji had been one of the main forces. Without his support, without the 7,000 valiant Mutri Great Cavalry following him into battle, even if Daluan Ruozan wanted to do something, even if he wanted to conquer Talas, he would be powerless without the valiant Mutri Great Cavalry. As the guard of the royal capital and the commander of the Mutri Great Cavalry, Huaba Senji's most important duty was to guard the Tsenpo. All the guards of the royal capital had been models of loyalty. Without the Tsenpo's order, they would never leave their posts. But now, Huaba Senji had not only deserted his post without the Tsenpo's order, but he had even mobilized the strongest Mutri Great Cavalry. This was something that had never happened in the history of the Uzun Empire. According to the laws of the Uzun, this was a crime punishable by death. Daluan Ruozan, regardless of the outcome of this battle, I only have one request. No matter what, do not get in the way of the battle between me and the Wushang cavalry. Huaba Senji's eyes shone, his expression cold and aloof. His gaze did not care about the battle, but was focused on one person. Of course, Daluan Ruozan nodded without hesitation. That was the agreement between us to begin with. Huaba Senji sternly said. Other than helping Daluan Ruozan defeat the Tang dynasty and restore the reputation of the Uzun Empire, he had left the royal capital and led the Mutri Great Cavalry to Talas. More importantly, he had to defeat an opponent. The Wushang cavalry of the Tang dynasty. The Uzun Empire dominated the world through its cavalry, and its echelon formation was renowned throughout the world. The entire plateau was covered in Uzun cavalry. Of all the cavalry, the most powerful were the White Xiong, Qinghai, and Mutri Great Kings, who stood at the peak of the pyramid. These were the 3 kings of the Uzun cavalry. But in the Battle of Zhangsheng training camp, the 8,000 Qinghai cavalry had all died at the hands of Wang Chong's Wushang cavalry, and in the Battle of the Triangular Gap, the 5,000 White Braves led by Dian Mangpoj had been completely wiped out. 2 of the best cavalry of the Uzun Empire had been lost, leaving only the Mutri Great Cavalry. 2 of the best cavalry forces had been wiped out by a single opponent. This was something that had never happened in the history of the Uzun Empire, and the opponent was the Tang dynasty, which had never been known for its cavalry. This matter had shamed all the Uzun cavalry on the plateau, including the Mutri Great Cavalry. This was why Huaba Senji had disobeyed the imperial decree and led the 7,000 Mutri Great Cavalry out of the royal capital into the wilderness of the city of Talas. The Mutri Great Cavalry had more than 300 years of history and were publicly acknowledged as the strongest existence in the Uzun Empire. Whether it was for the entire Uzun Empire or for the honor and pride of all Uzun cavalry, the Mutri Great Cavalry had to defeat the Tang dynasty's Wushang cavalry in front of the world and prove themselves to everyone. For this goal, Huaba Senji had fully supported Daluan Ruozan. He had even used his connections to help Daluan Ruozan borrow many soldiers from other royal districts. Ready! Huaba Senji slanted his long sword. That crimson treasured sword that was bestowed by the 5th king of Tsenpo was pointed straight at the rising sun behind the hill. Rumble! The earth shook and dust roiled. Following Huaba Senji's order, the Mutri Great Cavalry, who had been standing still all this time, began to move. An enormous aura exploded from the 7,000 Mutri Great Cavalry. A wave of heat surged out, causing even the grass on the hill to wither. Boom! In the next moment, the 7,000 Mutri great cavalry poured down from the top of the hill like a flood under the rising sun. In that moment, the heavy hoofbeats shook the world, even drowning out the sounds of battle on the eastern battlefield. The 7,000 Mutri great cavalry were fast, but the 8,000 celestial wolf cavalry led by Shamshak were even faster. The moment the Mutri great cavalry charged down, the 8,000 celestial wolf cavalry were already galloping toward the battlefield, leaving a trail of dust in their wake. At that moment, even the world seemed to lose color. "My lord, look over there." At the same time, Kong Xian seemed to sense something and suddenly raised his head to look at the distant celestial wolf cavalry, a hint of shock in his eyes. In terms of armor, aura, and strength, the celestial wolf cavalry were completely different from the other Turkic cavalry. Kong Xian felt like he was facing a powerful foe. And over there, Uzun has also moved. At the same time, another Wushang cavalry officer noticed the activity in the distance and loudly called out as he pointed in another direction. Everyone turned their heads and saw that behind the celestial wolf cavalry, there was another group of cavalry clad in gold and red armor, galloping over from another direction like a tidal wave. These two powerful forces of cavalry, one in front and the other in the rear, were charging toward the battlefield from a different angle. In a flash, an intense sense of danger swept over them. Both the celestial wolf cavalry and the Mutri great cavalry were among the most powerful cavalry forces on the continent, standing at the apex of the tens of thousands of cavalry on the continent. Just one of the two was already very difficult to deal with, let alone two cavalry forces charging at the same time. Li Sai rode the Fergana horse amidst thousands of cavalry. His heart was in turmoil, and in an instant, countless thoughts flashed through his mind. Both the celestial wolf cavalry and the Mutri great cavalry were illustrious and top-class cavalry forces of this world, their fighting power far surpassing that of other cavalry forces. Moreover, the two great cavalry forces added together far outnumbered the Wushang cavalry. To advance or to retreat, to fight or to defend, Li Sai had to make a decision in the shortest time possible. "My lord, what do we do?" Kong Xian's anxious voice came from next to him. The two forces of cavalry were approaching, and everyone felt a powerful pressure that they had never felt in any of the previous battles. Li Sai didn't say anything. His eyes swept across the battlefield as fast as lightning. The battle was still going on. His ears were filled with roars from all directions. One after another, the horses fell heavily to the ground. Blood splattered everywhere, and dust filled the air. The two cavalry forces were getting closer and closer. If they wanted to retreat, it was too late. But when Li Sai saw Sun Jiming, Zhuang Jingping, Qi Weisi, and the others fighting with the Western Turks and the Uzun, his heart froze, and he immediately made up his mind. "We have no path of retreat. Everyone hear my order. Prepare for battle." Li Sai unsheathed his sword, the massive Wuzi steel sword that was taller than a man raised high into the air and exploded with a heaven-shaking aura. At this moment, the entire world seemed to tremble. Boom! After a few moments of silence, the earth quaked as the 5,000 Wushang great cavalry began to move. But this time, their target was not the Western Turks or Uzun cavalry, but the charging celestial wolf cavalry and the Mutri great cavalry in the rear. Chapter 9:16. Boom, boom, boom. The 5,000 Wushang cavalry were unstoppable, sweeping through everything in their path. Bang! A Western Turkic horseman in the front was struck by a Wushang cavalry. With a scream, he was thrown 10-some meters into the air along with his horse. 1, 2, 3, countless Western Turkic and Tibetan cavalry were swept aside like weeds by the 5,000 Wushang cavalry. They were either knocked to the ground or thrown into the air, an intimidating sight to behold. Only by killing this kind of enemy will I feel a greater sense of accomplishment. As Shamshak watched from the back of his horse, he showed no fear. On the contrary, a hint of excitement appeared on his face, making him seem even more savage than ever. In the entire celestial wolf cavalry, including the Western Turkic Khaganate, Shamshak could be said to be the most sinister and bizarre brigadier general. He was cruel, bloodthirsty, and also as cunning and sinister as a viper. He lacked none of the boldness and strength of character that an illustrious brigadier general of the empire should have. But no matter how many eccentricities he had or how loathsome his style was, Shamshak would always be Duwusilli's most valued subordinate. In Duwusilli's mind, he was even more important than the Black Wolf Yabgu Agudulan. The reason Duwusilli regarded him with such importance was very simple. Shamshak knew how to kill his opponents, no matter how powerful they were. Everyone hear my order. That Imperial Martial Tang people leader is mine. None of you are allowed to touch him. I want to cut off his head and take it back to use as a wine vessel. Shamshak savagely said. As he spoke, he excitedly licked his dry lips, a bloodthirsty look in his eyes. Yes. The Celestial Wolf Cavalry loudly responded, all of them extremely excited. What a pity! Such powerful cavalry are paired with such a weak Imperial martial leader. I really don't know how Agudulan lost to them. But it doesn't matter, I can immediately take off his head effortlessly and avenge you. Shamshak looked at the distant Lisai like he was a weak lamb waiting to be slaughtered. It was far too easy for a brigadier general to kill an imperial martial expert. In Shamshak's eyes, Lisai was already a dead man. Rumble. Dust churned as a pitch-black halo of light exploded from Shamshak's body. It swept out like a storm, radiating to the feet of every Celestial Wolf Cavalry. The Celestial Wolf Cavalry, who had already reached the pinnacle of speed, were boosted yet again by this halo. Like a massive sword, they charged toward Lisai and the 5,000 Wushang cavalry. The earth rumbled and swayed. The 8,000 Celestial Wolf Cavalry and the 5,000 Wushang cavalry clashed, attracting the attention of countless people. Market. General Li is in danger. On the second defense line, Xue Qianjun stood at Wang Chang's side and almost immediately noticed the activity in the distance. A hint of deep concern appeared in Xue Qianjun's eyes as he watched the two groups of cavalry charge at each other. Xue Qianjun had never doubted the strength of the Wushang cavalry. In his mind, they were the strongest cavalry in the world. But that was only when Marquis was leading them. There was an insurmountable chasm between the Imperial Martial Realm and the Saint Martial Realm. Lisai was only at the peak of the Imperial Martial Realm. Without Wang Chong to lead him, it was simply impossible for him to contend against a brigadier general of the Celestial Wolf Cavalry. There's no need to worry. An indifferent voice rang out. Wang Chong stood beneath his massive banner, his face calm and unperturbed. But Marking, Xue Qianjun wanted to argue, but Wang Chong waved his hand and cut him off. Don't worry. Nothing will happen to Lisai. He had been paying attention to the battlefield this entire time. The Celestial Wolf Cavalry of the Duwusilli Empire and the Wushang Cavalry of the Tang Dynasty were two top-class cavalry forces that had never met before. That they were going to fight here was both a coincidence and an inevitability. He had already made ample preparations for this battle, including the problem of Lisai. Go. Only danger can temper your potential. I believe that one day, you will reveal your true brilliance. As Wang Chong gazed at Lisai's back, countless thoughts flashed through his mind. All this time, Lisai had been sheltered under Wang Chong's wings. Whether it was the battle against Dian Mengpoj at the Triangular Gap or the battle between Chishi Armory and Agudulan, Lisai had been too safe. Because Wang Chong had shielded him from all the dangers and storms, Lisai had remained at the peak of the Imperial Martial Realm. He had not been able to break through to the Saint Martial Realm and become a true invincible general. In his previous life, the reason why Lisai was able to achieve such a high level of success in such a short period of time and become the invincible great general who could single-handedly change the course of the entire battlefield and reverse the entire situation was because of the continuous dangerous battles. Time and time again, he had risked his life and escaped death. On the edge of life and death, Lisai had forced out the potential in his body. In such a short period of time, he had become a legend of the Empire. Death and injury were destined for Lisai's life. Only by facing these dangers could Lisai grow. This was the conclusion that Wang Chong had reached after thinking for a long time. Xue Qianjun stared at Wang Chong's profile in a daze. Sensing the determination in his eyes, he seemed to understand something and slowly relaxed. Together with Wang Chong, he silently gazed into the distance, watching the battle that was about to unfold between the two greatest armies of cavalry in the world. A whir! In the distance, dust billowed as the two groups of cavalry got closer and closer. Just when the two groups were about 2,000 feet away from each other and their auras locked onto each other, suddenly, an earth-shaking howl rang out in everyone's ears. That wasn't the howl of a wolf, because no wolf could make such a sound. Buzz. Just as the wolf howled, something strange happened. An invisible energy suddenly surged out of the 8,000 celestial wolf cavalry like a tsunami. The air instantly distorted and became indistinct, and the aura of the celestial wolf cavalry instantly transformed into a massive golden wolf head. Its eyes were disdainful, dignified, and ferocious. Rumble. The moment the wolf head appeared, the 8,000 celestial wolf cavalry's speed, strength, and dexterity all received a massive boost. Even the warhorses seemed to have changed, becoming much larger and more muscular. Even the sound of their hooves became much heavier. In the blink of an eye, the pressure and aura exuded by the 8,000 celestial wolf cavalry multiplied, undergoing a heaven-shaking transformation. The dust they kicked up soared from some meters into the air, rising at a rapid pace. But this was not the end of the celestial wolf cavalry's transformation. General, look. At Li Sai's side, Kong Xian's eyes widened and his pupils constricted as he suddenly pointed into the distance. Right before the eyes of the 5,000 Wushang cavalry, the moment the golden wolf appeared, the celestial wolf cavalry suddenly doubled in number, becoming a dense crowd of 16,000, charging forward. Illusion. Seeing this, Li Sai's eyelids twitched as he sat on the Fergana horse. He immediately recognized what was going on. The celestial wolf cavalry had suddenly doubled in number. There were at least 16,000 celestial wolf cavalry, perhaps even more. But this was impossible. There was no question that more than half of them were illusions. In all his years on the battlefield, this was the first time Li Sai had encountered such a situation. The celestial wolf illusory formation. As this thought flitted through Li Sai's mind, he suddenly recalled a rumor he had heard while serving in the Biding Protectorate. It was said that the Turkic steppe had a supreme celestial wolf illusory formation. This illusory formation had been invented by those strange shaman priests of the steppe and had been passed down for a long time. It was one of the 3 supreme formations of the Western Turkic Khaganate. Biding Protector General and Sishun had presided over the northern border for many years, rarely encountering a worthy opponent. And the only defeat he had suffered was at the hands of the celestial wolf illusory formation. It was rumored that in that battle, the steppe around the Biding Protectorate had been filled with the figures of the celestial wolf cavalry. It was because it was difficult to distinguish the real from the fake that the Biding Protector General had lost. Li Sai had not participated in that battle, so he did not know the specifics. But there was no one in the Biding Protectorate who did not know of the celestial wolf illusory formation. There was no doubt about this. Marquis, what do we do? In the rear, the Chishi officers at Wang Chang's side all broke out in cold sweat for Li Sai and the 5,000 Wushang cavalry. The Wushang cavalry against the celestial wolf cavalry, the Tang dynasty against the Western Turks. This clash had caused not just Xue Qianjuan's few subordinates, but even the officers behind the first defense line had sensed it and subconsciously glanced in the direction of the battle between Li Sai and Shamshak. The Wushang cavalry were powerful, but the celestial wolf cavalry were also capable of fighting 10 men at once. No matter how one looked at the situation, the Wushang cavalry were at a disadvantage. Believe in him. Wang Chong said these 3 words, his expression unperturbed. The Wushang cavalry were the most elite force under his command, and they were what he had relied on to sweep through the world. Although the Wushang cavalry had not experienced many battles and were not seasoned warriors, their meteoric metal armor and Wuzi steel swords were top-class equipment that not even the Wushang cavalry of the past possessed. In this aspect, the Wushang cavalry were equipped in the most luxurious state. Chapter 9:17. Kill. As expected, the distant Li Sai seemed to sense Wang Chang's thoughts. Turning his gaze, he gripped the massive sword on his back, his expression hardening. Hiya! Without the slightest hesitation, Li Sai urged his 5,000 Wushang cavalry toward the Celestial Wolf cavalry. Stop! At the same time, in the rear of the army, Huoba Senji suddenly raised an arm when he saw the change in the distance. He led the 7,000 Mutri Great Cavalry, dressed in gold and red armor and surging with waves of heat, to a sudden stop. "Milord!" The Mutri Great Cavalry officers at Huoba Senji's side were stunned by this sudden order and subconsciously turned to their commanders. Shouldn't the Mutri Great Cavalry be working with the 8,000 Celestial Wolf Cavalry to destroy the Tang people's army? It's too late. The Turks' Celestial Wolf Cavalry were one step ahead of us. Huoba Senji's eyes were as bright as the sun as he solemnly looked into the distance. Don't forget that in this battle, we went against the royal decree and came here. If our Mutri Great Cavalry wants to defeat the Tang people, we need no help from others. But the Prime Minister and the other great generals hope that we work together with the Celestial Wolf Cavalry to deal with them. One of the Mutri Great Cavalry deputy commanders next to Huoba Senji said. Does the Celestial Wolf Cavalry seem like they need our help? Huoba Senji indifferently said as he looked forward. Several of the deputy commanders of the Mutri Great Cavalry subconsciously looked into the distance and saw the Celestial Wolf Cavalry in front of them. With the Celestial Wolf illusory formation activated, their strength had risen by a great deal. Even from the perspective of the Mutri Great Cavalry, it was quite astonishing. In terms of momentum, the 8,000 Celestial Wolf Cavalry had completely suppressed the Tang Dynasty's Wushang Cavalry. The deputy commanders of the Mutri Great Cavalry immediately understood what was going on and felt slightly relieved. Wait until the Celestial Wolf Cavalry needs our help. Huoba Senji's crisp voice rang in everyone's ears. The generals immediately responded loudly, Prime Minister, this Huoba Senji, should we go and urge him? At the same time, on the high hills behind, Huoshu Wuzong couldn't help but frown when he saw this scene. He took 2 steps forward and whispered in Daluan Ruozen's ear. Huoba Senji was far too proud, and the Mutri Great Cavalry was far too proud. At a time like this, Uzun and the Western Turks should be cooperating seamlessly, but Huoba Senji's order for the Mutri Great Cavalry to stop and watch the battle from the rear had completely destroyed this feeling. This was not a good thing for Uzun's alliance with the Western Turks. Don't worry. Huoba Senji knew what to do. Moreover, Shamshak and the Celestial Wolf Cavalry won't like anyone interfering. Daluan Ruozen had an indifferent and relaxed expression on his face. Although Huoba Senji had stopped, he had little effect on the battle. The 3 sides were working together to besiege the Tang dynasty, and no one could change this. But Huoshu Wuzong still wanted to try and persuade him, but Daluan Ruozen shot him a glance. Huoshu Wuzong subconsciously turned his head and followed Daluan Ruozen's gaze. Nearby, he saw Dewusili, his head held high and his expression indifferent, standing beneath the golden wolf banner, his hands held behind his back and a proud expression on his face. In his daze, Huoshu Wuzong suddenly realized something and fell silent. Daluan Ruozen was correct. Dewusili and his Celestial Wolf Cavalry were the 3 best cavalry forces of the Western Turkic Khaganate, and in terms of military record, Dewusili had even defeated the Biding Protector General. Given his abilities, he had to be extremely confident in himself, so how could he allow others to interfere and help the Celestial Wolf Cavalry? It's about time. Huoshu Huizong's heart jolted, and he immediately turned his head. In the distance, he saw a golden wolf howling in the sky as the Celestial Wolf illusory formation of the Western Turkic Celestial Wolf Cavalry covered the heavens and earth as they charged toward the 5,000 Wushang Cavalry with an unstoppable momentum. The distance between the 2 sides was closing. In front of the mighty Celestial Wolf Cavalry, the 5,000 Wushang Cavalry were like a tiny boat in the middle of a furious storm, ready to be torn apart at any moment. Celestial Wolf. The Wushang Cavalry. The battle between these 2 elite cavalry forces had attracted everyone's attention. Wang Chong, Daluan Ruozen, Dewusili, and countless other soldiers of the Tang dynasty, the Uzun, and the Western Turks were all paying close attention to this clash of elite warriors. 200 zhang. 100 zhang. 70 zhang. The distance between the two sides was closing, and when it was only 50 zhang, roar. In the blink of an eye, everyone heard an earth-shattering roar. 10 charges, 10 victories, open. Boom. With a heaven-shaking rumble, the ground quaked. Without any hesitation, Li Sai took out the 10 charges, 10 victories formation. A surging energy containing boundless baleful energy and killing intent soared into the sky. In a flash, the energy exuded by the 5,000 Wushang cavalry increased tenfold. Whether it was in terms of strength, speed, or dexterity, all of them had swelled. Not only that, an invisible energy began to rise from the bodies of the 5,000 Wushang cavalry. Space began to blur as 1, 2, 3, 4, 49 phantoms appeared above the Wushang cavalry. In the blink of an eye, these illusory shadows materialized into 49 giant golden spears. The 5,000 Wushang cavalry had been training day after day for several months, and the 10 charges, 10 victories formation was far more powerful than it had been in the past. Not only had the number of golden spears increased from 10 to 49, but the effect on the Wushang cavalry had also greatly increased. Rumble! Thunderous booms came from the sky as dark clouds began to gather above the 5,000 Wushang cavalry, casting down their shadows and shrouding the 5,000 Wushang cavalry. On the ground, the auras of Li Sai and the others also began to swell. In just a few moments, they had reached a level where they could stand on equal footing with the 8,000 celestial wolf cavalry. Not only that, the aura of the 5,000 Wushang cavalry was still rising, surpassing the celestial wolf cavalry to an astonishing level. And this was not the end. In the distance, beneath the fluttering banner of the Qixi commander, Wang Chong had been paying close attention to Li Sai's movements this entire time. The moment Li Sai used the 10 charges 10 victories formation, Li Sai had the white-hoofed shadow connect with its master's mind, and the horse suddenly raised its hoof and stomped down. Rumble! There was a metallic clatter as 3 black and red war halos with peerless sharpness shot out from where Wang Chong was standing, swiftly engulfing the entire battlefield. In a flash, the power of these halos had caught up to the distant 5,000 Wushang cavalry, and one halo of dusk stallion after another appeared beneath the feet of the Wushang cavalry. The already powerful Wushang cavalry were bolstered by the power of Wang Chong's halos, and their strength swelled once more, their energy completely incomparable to before. The dark clouds in the sky grew even thicker and more ferocious. Buzz! Hidden in the celestial wolf illusory formation, Shamshak paled at this sight. This is impossible! Shamshak's pupils constricted and his body trembled as he lost his composure for the first time. This Wushang cavalry was completely different from the information he had gathered. At the very least, Uzun's Qinghai soldiers and white braves were not this powerful. Get ready to fight at any moment. Shamshak was not the only one who was shocked. Huoba Senji, 5,000 zhang away, was also shocked. The moment Li Sai used the 10 charges 10 victories formation, Huoba Senji's body trembled and he sat up straight on his horse. As he stared at the distant Wushang cavalry, his eyes exploded with a sharp light and his expression turned grave. The transformation of the Wushang cavalry had completely surpassed his expectations. He had originally believed that the celestial wolf cavalry of the Western Turks could easily defeat the Tang dynasty, but it now appeared that everything was full of variables and that things were no longer so simple. Whether or not the celestial wolf cavalry could defeat the Wushang cavalry was still a question. Impossible! Since when did the Central Plains have such a powerful formation? On the distant hills, the Uzun and Western Turkic commanders stared at the dark clouds over the Wushang cavalry and felt a massive shock. The celestial wolf Great General Duisili standing beneath the banner of the Western Turkic commander was especially shaken, his entire body trembling in unprecedented shock. Formation phenomena. According to the legends, when a formation fused with the energy of the world, it could cause the heavens and earth to respond. This phenomenon would not cover a very large area and would not last for very long, but it meant that the formation was extremely powerful. Duisili had only heard of this sort of formation from the shaman priests of the previous generation of the Western Turks. But this sort of formation was only a legend. Duisili had traversed the world and encountered all sorts of experts, so he knew all the famous experts of the Tang dynasty like the back of his hand. Even the formation used by the Tang dynasty's war god Wang Zhongxi had been a hair's breadth from reaching this level of formation phenomena, and when he used it, all sorts of phenomena were on the verge of appearing. Apart from Wang Zhongxi, no one else could reach this level of formation phenomena. It was rumored that when one comprehended the celestial wolf illusory formation and used it to its peak, one could also cause formation phenomena. But Duisili had made no progress after all these years, nor had he been able to figure out how to improve it. He had never imagined that in the distant foreign land of Talas, in the body of a boy of the Tang dynasty called Wang Chong, he would see the ultimate power of this formation. Chapter 9:18. No matter what, I have to find a way to get this thing. In a place where no one could see, Duisili's fists were tightly clenched, an intense ambition in his heart. In the distance, as Li Sai and his 5,000 Wushang cavalry pushed the 10 charges 10 victories formation to its limits, the most crucial moment had arrived. Not only did Shamshak not retreat in the face of the Wushang cavalry's formation phenomena, he was even more determined to kill them. Although Li Sai's 10 charges 10 victories formation seemed extremely powerful, the Western Turks' celestial wolf illusory formation was no slouch. He was confident that he could lead the celestial wolf cavalry behind him to destroy the Tang dynasty's Wushang cavalry as he had destroyed his enemies in the past. Nay! Warhorses neighed. In an instant, dust billowed from the ground as the 16,000 celestial wolf cavalry clashed with the black steel cavalry without any fanciful movements. Rumble! The entire eastern battlefield shook and swayed, the earth rocking like a deck in the ocean. At that moment, the collision of two of the world's finest cavalry seemed to tear the earth apart. The sound of the collision drowned out all the fighting on the battlefield, including the rumble of ballista bolts and the clatter of metal. Buzz! After what seemed like an instant, but also like countless eons, everything returned to normal. Gales howled, warhorses neighed, and dust rose 10 some zhang into the air, filling the air like a sandstorm. In the midst of the roiling dust, the golden wolf head above the celestial wolf cavalry was the first to vanish, but the formation had not been broken. The number of golden spears above the Wushang cavalry had dropped from 49 to 23. However, the intensity of the battle between the two sides did not decrease. Instead, it increased by a level. On the battlefield, the 8,000 celestial wolf cavalry and the 5,000 Wushang cavalry clashed against each other. Swords clashed against swords, armors clashed against armors, stellar energy vibrated against stellar energy. In a short period of time, all sorts of noises could be heard. The explosions of stellar energy, the scraping sounds of metal, the slashing sounds. There were thousands upon thousands of them, enough for anyone to clearly distinguish them, and it would even cause an intense piercing pain in their eardrums. The heavy muffled sound of the warhorses colliding with each other was enough to make everyone's heart palpitate. They felt a fear and uneasiness that came from the depths of their souls. The war between 13,000 people was even more intense and vast than the war between 100,000 people. Boom, boom, boom. Amidst the roiling dust, cold light flashed and warhorses neighed. One of the Wushang horsemen gripped his invincible Wuzi steel sword and charged at a celestial wolf horseman. But as his sword slashed down, the savage celestial wolf horseman twisted and vanished like a bubble. Illusion! The Wushang horseman immediately understood, but it was too late. Clang! A powerful force came from behind him, and the moment the Wushang horseman lost his grip, a strange Turkic sword slashed at his back. Die! The horseman had a savage expression on his face. The celestial wolf illusory formation could distinguish between real and fake. If one could not distinguish the real target, it would be extremely fatal in a battle like this. Countless foes had fallen to the swords of the celestial wolf cavalry because of their illusions. The celestial wolf cavalry had relied on this strange illusion ability to defeat one powerful foe after another and create their own legends. However, when the long sword swung down, it was a weapon that could easily split an excellent weapon in half. This time, however, it felt as if the long sword had collided with a tough iron wall. Not only did it fail to slice through the other party's armor, but it was also repelled by a powerful force. How could something like this happen? An intense shock appeared on the celestial wolf horseman's face. The celestial wolf cavalry was one of the 3 legendary cavalry forces of the Western Turkic Khaganate. Their armor, weapons, and horses were all of the best quality. There had never been a case where one could not cleave through the armor of an opponent. A sneer came from the side. Even though the 2 horsemen did not speak the same language, there were some things that could be understood without words. Clang. Sparks flew as the Wushang horseman swung his sword to cut off the sharp spikes on the armor of the celestial wolf cavalryman. But when his sword reached his arm, he suddenly felt a powerful resistance. The sharp woozy steel sword only managed to cut through half of the armor, causing blood to spurt out, but it did not succeed in cutting off his arm. What a powerful armor! With this thought, the sword-wielding Wushang horseman understood what was going on. The armor of the celestial wolf cavalry might not be as strong as the meteoric metal armor, but it was still far superior to ordinary armor. Even the sharpness of the woozy steel sword would find it very difficult to cleave the celestial wolf cavalry armor in 2. Gallop! The warhorse rumbled, stirring up billowing smoke and dust. In that short moment of contact, the 2 of them immediately intersected and separated into 2. Cavalry never stopped fighting. All battles of life and death took place in that brief moment. But even so, the battle was not over. Just as that celestial wolf cavalryman managed to escape death, another Wushang cavalryman galloped forward, his sword rising and falling. In a flash of cold light, the cavalryman's arm fell to the ground with a thud. This strike was extremely precise, landing exactly where the first Wushang cavalryman had struck. The 2 seemed to be one. Aya! As the celestial wolf horseman screamed in pain, a third Wushang horseman charged up from the rear. With a slash of his sword, blood spurted out as the celestial wolf horseman's head was separated from his body and he fell from his horse. The entire process had taken less than a second. Of the 3 Wushang cavalry, 2 had slashed at the head while 1 had slashed at the neck. Their timing and teamwork had reached the pinnacle of perfection. By the time the other celestial wolf cavalry had reacted, the celestial wolf cavalryman had already been beheaded, his headless body dragged into the distance by his warhorse. But the battle was far from over. Clang clang clang. One Wushang cavalryman after another continued to clash with the celestial wolf cavalry. The weapons and armor of the Wushang cavalry far surpassed that of the celestial wolf cavalry, and the 10 charges 10 battles formation had also allowed them to suppress the celestial wolf cavalry. But the massive number of illusions of the celestial wolf cavalry was still effective. 16,000 real and fake celestial wolf cavalry far outnumbered the Wushang cavalry. Most frightening of all was that even though some of the illusions had been destroyed in the fierce clash, the celestial wolf illusory formation was still producing new illusions, albeit at a much slower rate. Boom boom boom. The Western Turkic celestial wolf blades slashed down from all sides. Even though the powerful defense of the meteoric metal had reduced the power of the celestial wolf blades to the bare minimum, preventing the celestial wolf blades from falling to the blades, the stellar energy within them still managed to pierce through the armor. Squelch! One of the Wushang cavalrymen trembled and vomited blood. In the next moment, stimulated by the fresh blood, 7 to 8 giant green wolves howled and pounced from all directions. One of the wolves even bared its teeth and leaped into the air, its body even more muscular than an adult man's as it leaped onto the back of its horse. Beast! The Wushang cavalryman extended his meteoric metal armor into the wolf's mouth and then chopped off its massive head. Even in the moment of its death, the wolf was still baring its fangs, its face vicious as it bit down on the Wushang cavalryman's arm. And with this delay, even more celestial wolf cavalry were charging in from all directions. Clang clang clang. Boom boom boom. One celestial wolf cavalry after another fiercely clashed with the Wushang cavalry, the elite cavalry of the 2 continents constantly clashing and clashing. The power of the 2 formations was also fiercely clashing, and the intensity of the battle was far greater than anyone had imagined. There was no question that this was the most difficult battle the Wushang cavalry had ever fought. The illusions of the Celestial Wolf cavalry had a massive effect on the Wushang cavalry. At every moment, there were Wushang cavalry that were distracted by the illusions of the Celestial Wolf cavalry, losing the initiative and falling behind. But the Wushang cavalry still displayed their formidable fighting power. The moment any Celestial Wolf cavalry was discovered, countless Wushang cavalry would immediately charge forward. In these circumstances, even with their illusions, the Celestial Wolf cavalry could not gain much of an advantage. Marquis, what do we do? Will General Li Sai and the Wushang cavalry be in danger? In the distance, Xue Qianjun watched the fierce battle with deep concern in his eyes. There were quite a few around him who shared the same concern. This battle was far more terrifying than anyone had imagined. In previous battles, the Wushang cavalry had been virtually invincible and unstoppable. No one had ever seen a battle last for so long. Furthermore, the most worrying thing was that the battle between the two armies of cavalry had stirred up a storm of dust. As far as the eye could see, there was billowing smoke and dust everywhere, rising dozens of feet into the air. Furthermore, the howling winds on the battlefield had also affected the dust to the extreme. Chapter 9:19. Don't panic. Wang Chang's voice was flat and indifferent, but it was imbued with a calming strength. His eyes were unperturbed as he looked forward. Believe in General Li Sai and the Wushang cavalry. There is no force on this continent stronger than them. With their invincible Wuzi steel swords, their tough meteorite armor, the 3 layers of the halo of Dusk Stallion, and the 10 charges 10 victories formation at its peak, the Wushang cavalry had reached an unprecedented level in both offense, defense, and dexterity. It was very unlikely that there would be an existence on this continent stronger than the Wushang cavalry. At the very least, it could not be the Celestial Wolf cavalry. The moment Wang Chong spoke, the area around the massive banner became much quieter and more composed. "Milord, should we go and help? Shamshak's situation doesn't seem very good." The Western Turkic generals on the distant hills were also watching this battle with unease. One of Dewussali's deputy generals took a few steps forward, a worried look on his face as he saw the churning dust. "There's no need to worry. I believe in Shamshak's abilities. The Celestial Wolf cavalry will not lose to anyone," Dewussali confidently said. The Wushang cavalry's formation phenomena truly were formidable, but Dewussali believed in Shamshak's abilities even more. This trust was based on his past accomplishments. No matter how powerful a cavalry formation was, in the end, it was still a contest between people. Although the enemy's formation was formidable, it had a massive and irreparable flaw. It only had a single commander at the peak of the Imperial Martial realm. As long as the Imperial Martial Wushang commander was killed, the formation would collapse on its own. "Shamshak, it's time for you to go." Dewussali held his hands behind his back and looked into the distance, a sharp light in his eyes. In the distance, the battle between the Wushang cavalry and the Celestial Wolf cavalry had reached a fever pitch. "Everyone, charge with me." Li Sai wielded his massive Wuzi steel sword as he charged through the battlefield, his rough and resounding voice like a peal of thunder, serving as a guide for all the Wushang cavalry. The 5,000 Wushang cavalry were divided into several dozen 100-man teams that followed behind Li Sai. In front of Li Sai's mountainous body, there was almost no one who could block his edge. Every time that iconic giant sword struck, slashed, or whipped, a Celestial Wolf cavalry would be sent flying along with their horses. Some of the Celestial Wolf cavalry were even cut in two by Li Sai. Not even the finest Celestial Wolf armor of the Western Turks could withstand a full-strength blow from Li Sai. When Wang Chong forged Li Sai's sword, he had used several June of Hyderabad ore. Whether in weight or sharpness, it surpassed other Wuzi steel swords. Combined with Li Sai's strength, he was the only one capable of killing the Celestial Wolf cavalry with a single blow. As for the Celestial Wolf illusions, Li Sai had used the most primitive method. Li Sai raised his head to the sky and roared. Stellar energy surged from his body, sweeping out in all directions. All the illusions of the celestial wolf cavalry were shaken by the stellar energy and disappeared like bubbles, leaving behind only the real celestial wolf cavalry. Through this simple tactic, Li Sai was able to inflict grievous casualties on all the celestial wolf cavalry. Li Sai's intense battle style was shocking even to the seasoned celestial wolf cavalry, making them shudder with fear. "Kill him!" Roars came from all around as hundreds of Western Turkic celestial wolf cavalry surged forward. Even though Li Sai appeared fierce, the celestial wolf cavalry had the absolute advantage in numbers. Perfect timing. Li Sai's eyes were filled with disdain as his aura surged. He urged the Fergana horse beneath him, kicking up a trail of dust as he charged towards the celestial wolf cavalry without any hesitation. Boom! Li Sai's sword swept down like a mountain toward the celestial wolf cavalry. The celestial wolf cavalry were on a completely different level from the imperial marshal Li Sai. No matter how many celestial wolf cavalry there were, they were no match for Li Sai. Buzz! Just as Li Sai was about to kill the 5 or 6 celestial wolf cavalry around him, something happened without any warning. Li Sai's body trembled as an intense sense of danger welled up in his heart. At almost the same time, a low and sinister voice rang out in Li Sai's ears like the buzz of a mosquito. "Ha, I'll borrow your head." Although this voice was low, it was extremely clear, and it was tinged with the complacency of someone who had succeeded in their scheme. Boom! His voice hadn't even finished echoing in the air when a violent gale sprang up, and a storm of destructive energy that had been hidden for an unknown period of time suddenly appeared out of thin air within Li Sai's perception. Moreover, it struck toward Li Sai with the force of a thunderbolt. Li Sai couldn't see it, but he could hear the clattering of metal, the sound of a blade cutting through the air, causing Li Sai's body to tremble. "Not good. I've been ambushed." Li Sai grimaced. He hadn't been able to sense this person's presence earlier. It was clear that this person had been intentionally concealing his aura, only revealing it now. Even more frightening was that this person had far surpassed the imperial martial realm. This was a Saint Martial expert, and a brigadier general at that. A thought flashed through Li Sai's mind. Li Sai immediately recalled the commander of the celestial wolf cavalry. But it was too late for him to react. In order to kill him, this person had disguised himself as an ordinary celestial wolf cavalry and had only revealed himself now. It was clear that he had no intention of giving Li Sai a chance to retaliate. "Huang Badian! Kong Zongan! Hong Yochi!" Li Sai yelled. At the same time, the stellar energy in his body exploded as he did the only thing he could do. Skunda's strength. Li Sai spread his arms, his back to Shamshak. His entire body seemed to swell, and under the influence of an invisible energy, all the Wushang cavalry within a 50-zhang radius of Li Sai began to gather their energy into Li Sai's body. Under the shocked gazes of the countless celestial wolf cavalrymen, light gathered behind Li Sai. In the blink of an eye, a pitch-black divine spirit appeared, fusing with Li Sai's body. Bang! Behind Li Sai, the black halo beneath Shamshak's feet vibrated. He gathered all the energy in his body and fiercely slashed at Li Sai's back. With a heaven-shaking boom, Li Sai and his horse were sent flying by Shamshak. Still in the air, Li Sai vomited a mouthful of blood. Boom! Li Sai landed in a cloud of dust. Although Shamshak had put all his strength into this attack, he had not been able to kill Li Sai. How could there be such a thing? Shamshak's pupils constricted and his entire body paled. With his cultivation level, dealing with a peak imperial martial expert was as easy as flipping his hand, but Shamshak had not expected that this commander of the Wushang cavalry would be able to instantly explode in strength, directly breaking through from the imperial martial realm to the Saint Martial realm. Not only that, the armor on his body was made of some unknown material. His treasured sword could cut through hair and metal like it was metal, but when it struck the armor on his back, it didn't even leave a mark. Even with Shamshak's temperament and cultivation level, he couldn't help but be dumbfounded. Cutting formation. On the other side, Li Sai did not stop. Shamshak's sneak attack had dealt him massive damage. If not for the armor that Wang Chong had given him, which was made of pure meteoric metal and was imbued with a large number of toughening inscriptions that reduced the damage to a minimum, and the halo of Dusk Stallion, Li Sai would already be dead. Bang! Without the slightest hesitation, the moment Li Sai gave the order, the 5,000 Wushang cavalry split into 50 groups of 100 and scattered in every direction. Where do you think you're going? Shamshak paled and immediately urged his horse to give chase. All soldiers, hear my order. Stop them. Although he didn't know what the Wushang cavalry were doing or why they had suddenly scattered, his long experience still made Shamshak instinctively feel that something was wrong. He paid no attention to the other Wushang cavalry, instead following closely behind Li Sai's group. But the current Li Sai was completely different from before. Bang! The Wuzi steel sword in Li Sai's hand slashed out horizontally, and Nei's horse neighed. 2 or 3 celestial wolf cavalry and their horses were sent flying by Li Sai like broken kites. Before their bodies even hit the ground, a fierce and tyrannical stellar energy, brimming with destructive and scorching energy, had already slammed into their bodies. Before these celestial wolf cavalry could even hit the ground, they had already been killed in the air. The Skanda Halo! At this moment, Li Sai finally used the supreme technique that Wang Chong had taught him. When the calamity had erupted, Wang Chong, as the apocalyptic war saint, had led the 10 generals under his command into a rampage. The Skanda Halo was the unique technique of Wang Chong's #1 general. The Skanda Halo was somewhat similar to the Death God's Scythe, but it was much more powerful than the Death God's Scythe that Wang Chong had used in the southwest. Only by learning the Skanda Halo and possessing the power of the Skanda could one use the Skanda formation and borrow the power of others to greatly increase one's own strength. This was somewhat similar to the mighty miracle god formation used by Wang Chong's father, but it was far less powerful. When the Battle of Talas broke out, Wang Chong had spent 2 months preparing in Wushang's City of Steel. During these 2 months, Li Sai had cultivated the Skanda Halo. Chapter 920. Lord Protector General, do you need me to go? As the Wushang cavalry and the Celestial Wolf cavalry battled, a dignified voice came from Wang Chong's ear, accompanied by the galloping of hooves. Vice Protector General Cheng Qianli of the Anxi Protectorate Army had walked over to stand next to Wang Chong and look into the distance. This battle between elite cavalry had attracted the attention of many people, including the soldiers of the Anxi Protectorate Army. The commander under Dewusili should be called Shamshak. I have some understanding of him, and he should be a brigadier general. That commander of yours is probably no match for him. If necessary, I can go and help your Wushang cavalry. General Cheng, many thanks. Wang Chong finally turned his head and smiled, but the rejection in his eyes was clear. But there's no need. The battle has already begun, and it's too late to rush over. And I believe in Li Sai's strength. No one can kill him in this battle. In a battle between experts, every second counted. Cheng Qianli knew nothing about the Wushang cavalry, nor did he understand the tactics of the Wushang cavalry, but Wang Chong knew that this battle was about to reach a conclusion. Moreover, the Arab assault on the first defense line was extremely fierce. Wang Chong needed a brigadier general like Cheng Qianli to hold down the fort and reinforce the first defense line. As for Li Sai, Wang Chong had absolute confidence in this future invincible great general. No matter what, as one of the best great generals of the Tang dynasty, he should not die in a battle of this level. Xue Qinjun, go and get ready. Wang Chong quickly turned his gaze back to the front. Yes, Margaret. Xue Qinjun quickly withdrew. In the distance, the battle between Li Sai and Shamshak had finally reached its climax. Rumble. The sound of hooves thundering could be heard, kicking up a cloud of dust. Shamshak's order quickly took effect. Thousands of celestial wolf cavalry closed in from all directions, constantly squeezing the Wushang cavalry's space and blocking their path of attack. However, Shamshak had underestimated the strength of the Wushang cavalry. The 10 charges 10 victories formation was the crystallization of countless people's blood, sweat, and tears. It was one of the 10 most powerful formations in the entire Central Plains, and it was a peak-level formation for charging warhorses. Not only had it considered the needs of an army's charge, but it had also taken into account the battlefield and the battles between top generals. All unexpected situations were integrated into the formation. No matter what the opponent did, the formation would have a corresponding response. Shamask stubbornly pursued Li Sai, constantly getting closer and closer, hoping to use this method to avoid any potential dangers. But against the cutting formation, this was of no use. In the distance, the 5,000 Wushang cavalry did not charge as far as they usually did. After around 50 zhang, all the Wushang cavalry immediately charged back at full speed. The 5,000 Wushang cavalry retracted their iron claws and charged at Shamshak at Li Sai's side. At the same time, the auras of Li Sai, Huang Batian, Kong Xian, Hong Youqi, and the other 100 great generals fused into one, transforming into an enormous black Skanda Buddha. After charging several hundred zhang, it suddenly charged back at Shamshak. Kill! Li Sai roared, and the entire sky seemed to explode. As Shamshak got closer and closer, Li Sai, in a way that defied all common sense and was completely unaffected by inertia, turned around at the same speed as Shamshak. Mountain and river reincarnation slash. Li Sai dragged his sword with both hands, becoming one with his steed as he soared into the air. He spun around, mustering all the strength in his body to slash at Shamshak behind him. Rumble! A black storm surged into the sky, and within it, a beam of sword chi shot straight up, stretching more than 200 zhang into the air as it slashed down. Under the effect of the Skanda halo, Li Sai had gathered the strength of the others to unleash his most powerful technique, the mountain and river reincarnation slash. It was completely different from before, and its power was incredible. Stone General fights the heavens. At almost the same time, the earth quaked. To Li Sai's right, Huang Batian had unhesitatingly used the most powerful technique of the Stone General. The earth split open, and countless boulders flew out. As if summoned, they gathered toward Huang Batian, instantly transforming into a 34-meter-long stone arm that smashed toward Shamshak with the weight of Mount Tai. Earth-shaking dragon. Cloudwave ghost weep. At the same time, Kong Xian, Hong Youqi, and the others also used their most powerful techniques, man and horse becoming one as they charged at Shamask amidst the neighing of horses. Bastard! Shamshak's pupils constricted, and his entire body exploded with rage. He hadn't expected Li Sai to be so bold. He clearly knew that he was a Saint Martial Brigadier General, far stronger than him, and was clearly injured, but he still dared to turn around and oppose him. You're seeking death. Celestial Wolf Ghost Dragon Art. Without the slightest hesitation, Shamshak used the strongest technique of his life. BZZ. The earth quaked as black energy exploded from Shamshak's body. With a shrill howl, the black energy from Shamshak's body transformed into the head of a massive black wolf with savage fangs. Boom! The wolf head split open, revealing an even larger ghost dragon wreathed in black smoke that shot toward Li Sai, Huang Batian, and Kong Xian. The Celestial Wolf Ghost Dragon Art. This was a supreme technique that only the vice-commanders of the Celestial Wolf Cavalry could learn. It had been created several hundred years ago by the most mysterious shaman priests of the Western Turkic Khaganate. After obtaining this technique, Shamshak had devoted himself to studying it. He had already cultivated it to the highest level, the ghost dragon piercing the wolf, allowing him to receive the support of the world's energy. By relying on this technique, Shamshak had killed many formidable foes. Li Sai was only a peak imperial martial expert. Even if he borrowed the power of the Skanda to reach Tier 4 or 5 of the Saint Martial realm, he was still nothing to worry about. But as Shamshak was concentrating all his energy on killing Li Sai, Huang Batian, and Kong Xian, he seemed to hear the thundering of hooves. It wasn't just one or two, but tens of thousands of people charging at him. Shamshak's heart thumped, and he glanced around. This glance immediately caused Shamshak to pale in fright. This is impossible. Shamshak had believed that his order could disrupt the tactics of the Wushang cavalry, but he now realized that he was wrong. The Wushang cavalry had been completely unaffected by his order to stop them. The 5,000 cavalry had returned, forming 50 long ropes that were charging at him. And he was the center of these 5,000 cavalry's assault. Shamshak wanted to dodge, but it was too late. Li Sai and the others had suddenly turned around and charged at him precisely to attract his attention. Moreover, once the ultimate technique of the celestial wolf ghost dragon was used, it couldn't be withdrawn. Kill! Battle cries shook the heavens as the 5,000 Wushang cavalry charged toward a single person like a river flowing in reverse. Translated by Hypersheep 325. Using the power of an army to kill a single person on the battlefield was something that had never happened before. Although this could be done in theory, in reality, the difficulty was unimaginably high, bordering on impossible. This was the first time anyone had ever seen cavalry accomplish such an impossible task. Boom! In a flash of light, the first wave of several hundred Wushang cavalry was sent flying back, slamming into the enormous ghost dragon. The horses neighed, and even time seemed to stop. Under the barrage of several hundred Wushang cavalry, the enormous ghost dragon rapidly dimmed. However, this was only the beginning. Following closely behind, the second wave, the third wave, the fourth wave. They continued to charge forward, and the intense collisions were as dense as rain, resounding throughout the entire battlefield. At the same time, Li Sai, Huang Badian, and Kong Xian attacked with their strongest techniques. No one could clearly see what had happened in that instant. The rolling yellow sand reached its peak as the 5,000 warhorses charged back. It was boiling and completely covered the sky, as well as everyone's vision. Chapter 921. Congratulations to user. You have obtained 30 points of destiny energy. Congratulations to user. You have obtained 30 points of destiny energy. Congratulations to user. You have obtained 30 points of destiny energy. Congratulations to user. You have obtained 30 points of destiny energy. Congratulations to user. You have obtained 30 points of destiny energy. The warnings of the Stone of Destiny surged through his mind like a waterfall. 600, 800, 1,000, 2,000. In a short period of time, Wang Chong had obtained destiny energy as a reward, and the number was still rising. In this clash of top-class cavalry, Wang Chong obtained 30 points of destiny energy for each fallen Celestial Wolf cavalry member. The stalemate had finally come to reap the harvest. Li Sai activated the Skunda Halo and used the cutting formation to heavily wound Shamshak and destroy the formation of the Celestial Wolf cavalry. Without the support of the formation, the Celestial Wolf cavalry, whether it was speed, strength, or dexterity, were all greatly reduced. The Celestial Wolf cavalry of this level of strength simply could not compare to the Wushang cavalry. Under the pursuit of the 5,000 Wushang cavalry, the Celestial Wolf cavalry were immediately routed, and they suffered massive casualties. Squelch squelch. The high efficiency and tacit cooperation of the Wushang cavalry were fully displayed at this moment. The Wushang cavalry, under the support of the halo of Dusk Stallion, continued to pursue, their invincible Wuzi steel swords slashing at one spot after another. Blood spurted as one Celestial Wolf cavalry after another fell to the hooves of the horses. At the very front of the Celestial Wolf cavalry was a figure, his hands hanging by his sides and his body bent over the back of his horse. He was fleeing like a wolf. It was Shamshak. His face was pale, and his eyes were suffused with deep fear. If one looked carefully, one would discover that, under the charge of Li Sai's Skunda Halo and the 5,000 Wushang cavalry, Shamshak's aura had fallen from the Brigadier General level all the way to the Imperial Martial realm, all the way to Tier 7 or 8. He was even weaker than Li Sai. One could imagine Shamshak's situation. In Shamshak's entire life, he had never encountered such a crushing defeat. He wasn't defeated by Li Sai, nor was he defeated by Kong Xian or Hong Youqi. He was defeated by 5,000 people. In the past, Shamshak didn't even dare to think about it. He no longer dared to look back. It was already a fluke that he was able to escape with his life. It was thanks to his quick reflexes that he managed to forcefully interrupt the Celestial Wolf Demon God technique despite the backlash. In the current situation, as long as Li Sai and the others caught up and attacked, Shamshak would definitely die. That's impossible, That's impossible. How could there be such a formation in this world? Shamshak was terrified and uneasy. That strike had completely crushed his confidence. That bizarre 5,000-man battle formation had plunged Shamshak into a huge nightmare. But the crushing defeat of the Celestial Wolf Cavalry had a far greater impact and shock on another person than Shamshak or anyone else. Although he had not taken part in the battle, this battle had completely represented him, represented his honor, and represented the entire Western Turkic Khaganate. Bastard! On the high hills, Duwissali was dumbstruck by this sight, his body trembling in rage. The Celestial Wolf Cavalry were one of the 3 elite cavalry forces of the Khaganate, and they had never suffered a defeat before. Duwissali found it impossible to believe that his Celestial Wolf Cavalry would lose to the Tang dynasty. Shamshak, you useless thing! You couldn't even kill a puny imperial martial expert. Duwissali clenched his fists, his eyes exploding with rage. Chekenbenba. Go down and tell Shamshak that if he can't defeat the Wushang cavalry, he shouldn't come back. Duwissali coldly said. Yes, General. The moment Duwissali gave the order, a Western Turkic officer at Tier 6 or 7 of the Saint Martial realm immediately left to carry out the order. A few moments later, he rode off on a warhorse, leaving a cloud of dust behind him. On the side, Huishu Wuzong and Dusong Mengpoj couldn't help but glance at Duwissali, a hint of surprise in their eyes. The Celestial Wolf Cavalry had suffered a crushing defeat and Shamshak had been heavily injured. The two of them had believed that Duwissali would personally enter the fray, or at least summon the Celestial Wolf Cavalry back. They had never imagined that Duwissali would not do such a thing and would instead give the order to fight to the death. For the first time, the two of them sensed the tough side of the Celestial Wolf Great General, and they also understood why he had been able to sweep through the Western Turkic steppe, sweeping through all obstacles and rarely suffering defeat. Only Daluin Ruozan remained calm on the side. Long before they had begun working together, Daluin Ruozan had thoroughly investigated and understood Duwissali. This Duwissali was the true Duwissali. Prime Minister, should I send an order to Hwaba Senji? There's no need. He's already moved out. Daluin Ruozan looked forward, a faint smile on his face. Rumble. The moment Shamask and the Celestial Wolf Cavalry were defeated, the Mutri Great Cavalry that had been watching from the edge of Daluin Ruozan's field of vision finally began to charge toward the Wushang Cavalry. In Hwaba Senji's view, the moment the Celestial Wolf Cavalry were defeated, they had lost the right to challenge the Wushang Cavalry. Everyone hear my order. Kill. Charge. The wind was howling. Hwaba Senji sat on his tall divine chariot and leaned forward slightly. His eyes were filled with a strong desire to fight. Behind him, the 7,000 Mutri Great Cavalry followed closely behind him in a mighty wave of heat and dust. Luzon and the Tang dynasty. The Mutri Great Cavalry and the Wushang Cavalry. This decisive battle that had been decided by fate should have taken place long ago. Rumble. The 7,000 Mutri Great Cavalry charged in unison, their aura even more powerful than the 8,000 Celestial Wolf Cavalry. At this moment, the eyes of all 7,000 people shot out sparks of hatred, as well as an intense desire to fight. Get ready! At the same time, on the other side, Li Sai, Huang Batian, Kong Xian, and the other Wushang cavalry commanders immediately sensed the 7,000 Mutri Great Cavalry. Without the slightest hesitation, Li Sai gave the order to recall his troops. The Mutri Great Cavalry. Li Sai's eyes narrowed as he looked at the cavalrymen charging over from afar. They were like balls of fire burning in the air. He immediately recognized them. The Mutri Great Cavalry. The strongest cavalry of the Uzun Empire, the only cavalry to be crowned with the title of Great Cavalry. The word great signified that they were the undisputed number one. Although Li Sai had never encountered the Mutri Great Cavalry, Li Sai had fought with Uzun's White Braves. All the Wushang cavalry knew just how powerful Dian Mangban's White Braves were. At the time, the two sides had been locked in a fierce battle and had almost been completely wiped out by the ritual tools of the Bon sect. The Mutri Great Cavalry ranked even higher than the White Braves in Uzun, and if the White Braves were so powerful, then the Mutri Great Cavalry was even more powerful. Everyone, get ready. Arrow formation. Li Sai's voice resounded over the battlefield. All the Wushang cavalry swiftly gathered, and the 10 charges 10 victories formation began to vibrate once more. 1 spear, 2 spears, 3 spears. For spears, a total of 49 golden spears took shape over the Wushang cavalry, and a fierce and murderous aura surged out of them like a storm. The Skanda halo could only last for an hour. After that, Li Sai's cultivation would fall back to the imperial martial realm. Li Sai had to hurry and defeat the Mutri Great Cavalry and Celestial Wolf Cavalry so that the tens of thousands of Chishi reinforcements behind him wouldn't be routed by these 2 top-class cavalry forces. Rumble. Under the light of the rising sun, the earth trembled as the 7,000 Mutri Great Cavalry charged forward faster and faster. Great Crimson Sun Formation. Without the slightest hesitation, Huoba Senji instantly unleashed the Mutri Great Cavalry's most powerful technique. In an instant, an invisible power pierced through the air and enveloped the 7,000 Mutri Great Cavalry. Under the gazes of countless people, waves of invisible flame energy gathered from the rising sun and condensed in the air above the 7,000 Mutri Great Cavalry. These streams of fire were tangible and tangible, instantly transforming into a massive ball of fire that engulfed all the Mutri Great Cavalry. From a distance, it looked like a moving sun had appeared over the earth, rapidly approaching. Cries of alarm came from all over the battlefield, everyone who saw this sight dumbfounded. Even the distant Celestial Wolf Great General, Duwu Sili, revealed a hint of shock. Very few people had not heard of the Mutri Great Cavalry, but this force of cavalry had never left the royal capital of the Uzan Empire, so almost no one in the world had ever experienced their true power. When Huoba Senji's Great Crimson Sun Formation appeared, all the Mutri Great Cavalry were shrouded in a dazzling light that made it impossible to open one's eyes. This was a power completely different from the Western Turks' Celestial Wolf Illusory Formation. It was tyrannical, blazing, and powerful. Damn it! I can't open my eyes at all. Li Sai, what do we do now? Huang Batian shouted from the side. Even his imperial martial cultivation had been affected, and he couldn't even open his eyes, much less distinguish between the Mutri Great Cavalry, let alone the others. The situation was extremely unfavorable for them. That's right. The light around them is too intense. If we can't see them, we won't be able to attack them. Kong Xian's voice came from the side, tinged with worry. Chapter 9:22. Ready. Everyone listen to my orders. The Uzan's formation is similar to the Western Turks, only affecting our eyes, not our strength. In a little while, listen to my whistle. No matter how many people there are, charge straight ahead. If your eyes are affected, close your eyes and use your ears to listen. A look of determination flashed through Li Sai's eyes as he clenched his teeth and made up his mind. When enemies met on a narrow path, only the courageous would emerge victorious. The Tang dynasty had no path of retreat. If not even the Wushang cavalry could stop the Uzan Mutri Great Cavalry, then if they were allowed to smoothly charge through, it would be a disaster for the entire Tang dynasty army. Li Sai had no other choice but to fight. Rumble! War horses rumbled. On the ground, 2 groups of cavalry charged at each other, constantly approaching each other. "Milord, what do we do? Should we join in? Work with the Mutri Great Cavalry to deal with the Tang dynasty?" In the distance, a group of Celestial Wolf Cavalry had stopped and turned to their leader. With the help of the Mutri Great Cavalry, the Celestial Wolf Cavalry had obtained a rare moment to catch their breath and seize the opportunity. If the Celestial Wolf Cavalry turned around and worked with the Mutri Great Cavalry, they would definitely be able to defeat the Tang people. No! The eyes of the deputy commander of the Celestial Wolf Cavalry flashed, but he quickly shook his head and refused without the slightest hesitation. The Uzan's formation halo doesn't just affect the Tang people, it affects us as well. After all, we're different from the Uzan, and we're using a different formation. If we force our way in, not only will we be of no help, we might even end up fighting the Uzan because we won't be able to tell the target apart. At the start, he had been rather confused as to why the Uzun had stopped and watched from the sidelines, but now he understood. It wasn't that they were unwilling to help, but that their formation was too special. The energy of this formation was too domineering and incompatible with the celestial wolf illusory formation, making it impossible for the two to work together. Putting aside the hesitation of the celestial wolf cavalry, the clear and melodious roar of a dragon resounded in the distance, drawing everyone's attention. Li Sai took the lead. Guided by the whistle, he led the thousands of Wushang cavalry toward the Mutri Great Cavalry like a blazing sun with an unstoppable momentum. Of the entire Wushang cavalry, the only one who wasn't affected by the light of the Great Scarlet Sun formation was Li Sai, who had borrowed the power of the Skanda to advance to the Saint Martial realm. 10 meters, 8 meters, 5 meters. At this moment, even time seemed to slow down. Boom. No one could see the situation on the battlefield clearly. The Great Red Sun formation of Uzun's army was too dazzling. Everyone could only see an army of thousands colliding with a dazzling, huge sun on the ground. In that instant, the heavens shook and the earth trembled. The force of the collision was so great that even the second line of defense in the distance trembled slightly. In the chaos, countless warhorses neighed in fright. Meanwhile, the heat waves from the battle between the two top-notch cavalrymen spread out to a radius of several thousand zhang. Within this region, all of the vegetation on the ground was scorched. Even the warhorses of the Uzun and Western Turks neighed, their eyes wide as they fled. Thud-thud-thud. After a short period of silence, everyone heard a continuous series of collisions that were as dense as rain. Countless warhorses collided violently in the dazzling sunlight, constantly weaving in and out of the way. Everyone keep up. Don't get separated. Close your eyes and follow Lord General's whistle. Maintain the formation. Kill. The fierce battlefield was in complete chaos. The power of the Great Scarlet Sun formation of the Mutri Great Cavalry was on full display by borrowing the power of the sunlight. Although more than half of the battlefield was blinded by the blinding light, the Mutri Great Cavalry within the Great Scarlet Sun formation were not affected in the slightest. Boom boom boom. Massive and long scimitars were constantly raised, leaving black afterimages in the air as they accurately hacked at the bodies of the Wushang cavalry. The weapons of the Mutri Great Cavalry were completely different from those of the ordinary Uzun cavalry. Although they were both scimitars, these scimitars were on a completely different level in terms of size, sharpness, and weight. Every strike of this gigantic scarlet scimitar was incomparably heavy and weighed more than 10,000 caddies. Even more frightening was that each slash of these scimitars carried a scorching energy that could burn meridians through the scimitars and into the enemy's body. Not even the White Braves could endure this burning energy. This was one of the reasons why the Mutri Great Cavalry had become the strongest cavalry force of the Uzun Empire. Boom boom boom. Again and again, the sounds of collisions rang out from the void and resounded throughout the entire battlefield. Careful. There's something strange about their scimitars. What tough armor. General, our Wuzi steel swords can't cut through their armor. Ugh. The Mutri Great Cavalry were not only difficult to deal with because of the scorching energy on their scimitars, but also because of their golden red armor. The Wuzi steel swords that the Wushang cavalry were equipped with were so sharp that they could even cut through steel several feet thick. The Celestial Wolf cavalry were made of the finest steel materials and were imbued with a large number of toughening runes, but a single swing of the Wuzi steel swords could still cut through half their armor. But this time, the Mutri Great Cavalry were completely different. The sharp Wuzi steel swords could only leave shallow indentations of about half an inch. This was completely different from the previous battles. The armor of the Mutri Great Cavalry was much sturdier than he had imagined. I didn't think that Prime Minister would be able to forge such powerful equipment on the Uzun Plateau. On the distant hills, Duwu Sili narrowed his eyes and suddenly spoke. Although the Uzun's Great Scarlet Sun formation was dazzling, it didn't have much of an effect on a top-class general like Duwu Sili. What surprised Duwu Sili the most was the armor the Uzun were wearing. Duwu Sili's Celestial Wolf Cavalry had already clashed with the Tang dynasty, So Dewussili had a deep understanding of how sharp their weapons were. General is too kind. It's just a few sets of armor, not worth mentioning. Daluan Ruozen faintly smiled, offering no explanation. For this war, Daluan Ruozen had made far more preparations than anyone had imagined. The Wuzi steel swords were made of Hyderabad or from the distant Sind. They were incomparably sharp and could cut through metal like mud, displaying their terrifying might in the War of the Southwest. Since Daluan Ruozen was prepared to use Wang Chong, how could he not have included the Wuzi steel swords in his calculations? The Uzun Plateau was barren and lacking in resources. In this aspect, it could not compare to the Tang dynasty. Even so, the Uzun Plateau had an advantage that no one else could compare to. In the long history of the Uzun Plateau, a large number of meteorites had fallen from the sky, landing in various parts of the Uzun Plateau. For a very long time, no one had ever paid any attention to the meteoric metal that had fallen from the sky, and no one had ever excavated it. Only when Daluan Ruozen had ordered that all the meteoric metal scattered across the plateau be gathered up. The meteorites on the Uzun Plateau might not have been as much as Wang Chong's cousin Wang Liang, but it was more than enough to equip a force of 7,000 Mutri Great Cavalry. Daluan Ruozen had expended a great deal of energy to fuse the meteoric metal into the armor of the Mutri Great Cavalry and reforge them to achieve this result. This was a surprise to Dewussili's Celestial Wolf Cavalry, but to Daluan Ruozen, it was within his expectations. Rumble! In the distance, with a heaven-shaking roar, two groups of cavalry charged forward. This decisive battle between top-class cavalry had finally come to a conclusion. The 10 charges 10 victories formation that the Tang dynasty had summoned shuddered violently. The 49 golden spears above the army had been halved, leaving only 20-some spears. The dark clouds in the sky had also vanished. But the Mutri Great Cavalry was not in a good state either. The dazzling red light around the 7,000 Mutri Great Cavalry had been halved. Although it was still dazzling, it was no longer as dazzling. In this battle, both sides were actually evenly matched. Not only were the formations of both sides not broken, but the number of casualties was also extremely few. Li Sai, how do we fight now? On the other end of the battlefield, Huang Badian turned and shouted. In this battle, the several thousand Wushang cavalry had adopted the arrow formation and successfully pierced through the Mutri Great Cavalry. The meteorite metal armor that Wang Chong had equipped them with had played an important role. Just like how the Wuzi steel swords were ineffective against the Mutri Great Cavalry, the Mutri Great Cavalry's attacks were similarly incapable of breaking through their meteorite metal armor. The situation isn't good. Their stellar energy contains a scorching flame energy. We have to find a way to break their core. Kong Xian shouted. This was not the first time they had fought against the elite Uzun cavalry, so they were no stranger to the scorching flame energy that the Mutri Great Cavalry had sent into their bodies. This was no ordinary stellar energy, but the result of using other artifacts. At the Triangular Gap, the White Braves led by Dian Mengpoj had used a similar method. Don't worry about that for now. Let's charge a few more times and break their formation. Their weapons and armor aren't as strong as ours. With each charge, their armor will be damaged a little. As long as we keep charging, we'll be able to defeat them. Chapter 923. The Mutri Great Cavalry were much stronger and more valiant than the White Braves and Celestial Wolf Cavalry, but the Wushang Great Cavalry were no longer the same. If the Wushang Great Cavalry had had their current equipment and weapons at the Battle of the Triangular Gap, they would have been able to deal with the Uzun White Braves without so much trouble, not even with the heart of the Great Bon. Buzz. Following Li Sai's order, the 5,000 Wushang Great Cavalry turned around and charged back at the Mutri Great Cavalry, leaving a trail of dust in their wake. But this time, with their backs to the sun, the feeling was completely different. Although the 7,000 Mutri Great Cavalry were still covered in dazzling red light, they were no longer so blinded that they couldn't even open their eyes. Moreover, with their backs to the sun, each Mutri Great Cavalry could be clearly seen in the red light. Bang! All the Wushang Great Cavalry were invigorated by this sight, and they let out heaven-shaking cheers. Kaio! Kill! Armor clattering and horses neighing, the thousands of Wushang great cavalry turned around and once more charged at the 7,000 Mutri great cavalry. Kill them! At the same time, within the formation, Huaba Senji's eyes were bloodshot, and a vicious glint shone in his eyes. With a roar, he led all of the Mutri great cavalry toward Li Sai and the others. In the clash just now, Huaba Senji had already gotten a feel for the strength of the Wushang great cavalry. The great Tang cavalry was indeed ferocious, but they were not invincible. Everyone hear my order. Gather the army. Work with the Uzun great cavalry and kill them. At the same time, in a place that no one was paying attention to, Chechen Benba unsheathed his sword and pointed it at the sky. The weakening of the Great Scarlet Sun formation of the Mutri Great Cavalry had not only given the Wushang Great Cavalry a chance, but also gave the defeated Celestial Wolf Cavalry a chance to join forces with the Mutri Great Cavalry. The Tang Dynasty cavalry were far too powerful. If one had not seen it with their own eyes, no one would have believed that the Tang Dynasty, a kingdom of infantry, would have possessed such powerful cavalry. The nomadic Western Turks and the Uzun Empire were incapable of defeating them. In this situation, working together was the best course of action. Rumble! Countless Celestial Wolf cavalry gathered and charged at the Wushang cavalry under Chechen Benba's order. A chaotic battle had begun. Pass on my order. Carry out the plan. While this three-way melee of top-class cavalry had attracted everyone's attention, behind the second defense line, Wang Chong slowly drew back his gaze and waved his arm, issuing an order. There was no way to determine the outcome of the battle between the top three cavalry forces in a short period of time, and now was the time to carry out his plan. Boom! The earth-shattering sound of war drums, with a unique metallic texture, suddenly rang out on the eastern battlefield. The sudden sound of the war drum quickly attracted the attention of all parties. Wang, on a hill in the distance, Daluan Ruozan stood under the white yak war banner of the Ngari royal lineage, and looked over almost instinctively. Mounted on the white-hoofed shadow, Wang Chong faced Daluan Ruozan across more than half the battlefield, a meaningful smile on his lips. Wang, seeing the smile at the corner of Wang Chong's mouth, Daluan Ruozan's eyelids twitched violently, and a bad feeling arose in his heart. He had fought with Wang Chong many times in the southwest, so he had a deep understanding of this 17 or 18-year-old youth. He would never do something without rhyme or reason, much less speak without thinking. However, Daluan Ruozan still didn't understand what went wrong. What did Wang Chong's smile mean? Attack! Wang Chong paid no attention to Daluan Ruozan, his woozy steel sword swinging down at the tens of thousands of Uzun and Turkic cavalry. In the next moment, the earth cracked and the mountains collapsed. The tens of thousands of soldiers stationed behind the second line of defense suddenly took the initiative to charge forward. It was to the extent where even the ballista army led by Su Kui took the initiative to leave the steel defensive line. Under the protection of a group of heavily armored shield soldiers, they advanced towards the eastern battlefield at full speed. Peng, peng. The ballista bolts boomed over the battlefield, and wave after wave of black ballista bolts left a trail of death in the air as they shot toward Uzun and the Turkic cavalry. Squish, 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 squish. Kill! The countless mercenaries of the western regions charged forward like tigers descending a mountain, brandishing their sabers, spears, swords, and halberds. And this was not the only change on the battlefield. 1,000 zhang from the second defense line, Sun Jiming, Zhuang Jingping, Qi Weisi, Gao Feng, Nye Yan, and the others had originally been leading the tens of thousands of soldiers on the battlefield, but they had unwittingly distributed themselves to the eastern, central, and western sides. However, the moment the earth-shattering sound of the war drums rang out, a sudden change occurred. The group of people seemed to have received some sort of signal and began to move in unison. Marquis sent the signal. Hurry! Ha! Daluan Ruozan still fell for it. He still can't beat Marquis. Hurry! Don't delay Marquis' operation. Lord Li Sai has already completed his mission. It's our turn now. Their eyes were bright and their spirits were roused. Daluan Ruozan believed that he had a deep understanding of Marquis, But alas, Marquis was far more formidable than Daluin Ruozen had imagined. In terms of strategy and tactics, Daluin Ruozen had always been on a different level from Marquis. Rumble. On the eastern, central, and western sides of the battlefield, the great Tang armies began to spread out. If one looked down from the sky, one would see that these three armies were converging, forming a massive arc that split the more than 100,000 Uzun and Turkic cavalry in two. The tens of thousands of Chishi reinforcements behind the second defense line had formed a massive trap, surrounding the 50 to 60,000 Uzun and Turkic cavalry. An army of nearly 100,000 against 50 to 60,000 Uzun and Turkic cavalry, and with the threat of the ballista army, one could easily imagine the fate of this divided army. Not good. On the hill, Daluin Ruozen paled at this sight. All of these changes happened too quickly, too quickly. He had divided Wang Chong's 40,000 cavalry into three areas, and Daluin Ruozen had completely suppressed them. In Daluin Ruozen's plan, he would soon be able to defeat them one by one. But now, Daluin Ruozen suddenly realized that these three groups of cavalry had not been forced apart by his army at all. From the start of the battle until now, they had been consciously dividing themselves into these three areas. Pass on my order. All the front wings, withdraw. Pass on my order to the left, right, and rear wings to attack. Do everything in your power to tear apart the Tang people's blockade. Tell Huaba Senji to abandon the Wushang cavalry and advance at full speed to scatter the three Tang dynasty armies. In a few short moments, Daluin Ruozen had issued several orders. The winds howled over the hills, causing Daluin Ruozen's robe and hair to flutter in the wind. Daluin Ruozen looked forward, and though he appeared calm, there was a hint of anxiety in the depths of his eyes. Daluin Ruozen had been famous for many years, and he had not felt the slightest ripple in his heart when fighting against a veteran like Zhangqiu Jianqiong. But when facing Wang Chong, Daluin Ruozen had to focus and put all his strength into it. Wang Chong's art of war was completely different from that of any other general of this era. His tactics were unconstrained and unconstrained, impossible to follow. The Celestial Wolf Cavalry, the Wushang Cavalry, and the Mutri Great Cavalry were three of the strongest cavalry forces in the world. They should have been the main characters of this battle, the crux to victory. But in Wang Chong's case, they had become bait to draw the attention of the army. As for the battle between the Uzun, the Western Turks, and the Tang dynasty cavalry, they had become the true main characters. A second ago, Daluin Ruozen had the absolute advantage, but a moment later, the situation had reversed. His army of more than 100,000 had been cut in two, and his 50 to 60,000 soldiers were at an absolute disadvantage, facing the fate of complete annihilation. This sort of thing could only happen when facing Wang Chong. Rumble! Following Daluin Ruozen's order, the entire army began to move. In the eastern part of the battlefield, the Celestial Wolf Cavalry, the Wushang Cavalry, and the Mutri Great Cavalry were engaged in a fierce battle, but upon hearing Daluin Ruozen's order, Huaba Senji only hesitated for a moment before charging forward. Everyone hear my order. Ignore the Wushang Cavalry and follow me. The armor of the Wushang Cavalry was far too tough and covered in toughening inscriptions. Its defensive capabilities were so great that the weapons of the Mutri Great Cavalry were incapable of cutting through it. This battle would not end in a short time. Moreover, there was still a chance in the decisive battle with the Wushang Cavalry, but if the army was routed, there would be no chance at all. Hiya! Huaba Senji roared and immediately led the thousands of Mutri Great Cavalry to charge into the distance like a ball of raging fire. Great General has ordered us to go as well. At almost the same time, Chechen Benba received Duwusili's order. Duwusili and Daluin Ruozen, these two great generals, were bound together in glory and bound together in defeat. If the army collapsed and suffered too many casualties, there would be no point in fighting this war. The 40,000-some Western Turkic cavalry would not be able to accomplish anything. Moreover, many of the 50 to 60,000 trapped soldiers were Western Turkic cavalry. Gallop! It took only a few moments for Chechen Benba and his several thousand Celestial Wolf cavalry to leave a trail of dust in their wake. In such a short time, two cavalry forces had abandoned their opponents. This would have been unimaginable on the battlefield, but it was happening right now. Chapter 9:24. General, Marquis has succeeded. Cheers of joy resounded through the battlefield as the Celestial Wolf Cavalry and Mutri Great Cavalry received their orders and galloped toward the distant battlefield. Kong Xian couldn't contain his joy, his face brimming with excitement. The Marquis would not easily act, but when he did, it was the moment that decided the outcome of the battle. Just by looking at the anxious expressions on the faces of the Celestial Wolf Cavalry and the Mutri Great Cavalry, it was clear that their lord's plan had worked. Li Sai nodded. Only he had a rough idea of Wang Chang's plan. The others knew nothing at all. Now that the plan was complete, it was time for the Wushang cavalry to retreat. Everyone hear my order. Immediately retreat. Stop the Celestial Wolf Cavalry and Mutri Great Cavalry. Don't let them ruin Marquis' plan. A harsh light flashed through Li Sai's eyes. Without the slightest hesitation, he took the lead and chased after the two groups of cavalry. Let's go! Huang Badian, Kong Xian, and the others followed closely behind, kicking up a cloud of dust as they galloped forward. The three halos of Dusk Stallion moved with incredible speed. The Celestial Wolf Cavalry had only traveled a short distance when the galloping of hooves could be heard. Li Sai was already leading the Wushang cavalry in pursuit. Stop them! Up ahead, Chechen Benba quickly turned the Celestial Wolf Cavalry around. The several thousand Celestial Wolf Cavalry turned and charged toward Li Sai's group. But this time, Chechen Benba had miscalculated. Li Sai charged at full speed, and when he was several dozen zhang away, he made a sharp turn. Completely unaffected by inertia, he drew a massive arc across the earth and left the Celestial Wolf Cavalry in the dust. In the entire world, only the Wushang Cavalry could do such a thing. Boom! Before Chechen Benba's group could catch up, the several thousand Wushang Cavalry had already left them in the dust, galloping toward the Mutri Great Cavalry. Damn it! After them! Chechen Benba was furious. Shamshak's strength had been greatly reduced. With his cultivation at the Imperial Martial Realm, it was simply impossible for him to use the Celestial Wolf illusory formation, while Chechen Benba was not even a brigadier general. In these circumstances, it was simply impossible for him to catch up to the 3 layers of the halo of Dusk Stallion and the 10 charges 10 victories formation of the Wushang Cavalry. Nay! Almost at the same time that Che Kun Benba and the others were left behind by Wushang's cavalry, on a distant hill, before Daluan Ruozhen and the others could react, a war horse suddenly neighed, and a figure as imposing as a mountain leaped into the sky. Like a bolt of silk, it crossed over a distance of more than 10 zhang, landed on the ground outside the hill, and headed towards the entire battlefield. Duwisili! Recognizing that figure, Daluan Ruozhen could not help but frown. Prime Minister, what should we do? Duwisili has already moved out. This is completely at odds with our original plan. Huishu Huizong rode forward 2 paces on his horse and looked ahead, a voice in his ear. Let him do as he pleases, Daluan Ruozhen said after a few moments of silence. In his plan, the Imperial Great General would only move out at the last moment. It was not that Daluan Ruozhen was being cautious, but that the Imperial Great General had an extraordinary status. If one side moved out, the other side would inevitably do the same, ultimately leading to a battle between 2 Imperial Great Generals. Not only would this not be of much help to the battle, it would also affect many ordinary soldiers and increase the number of casualties on both sides. Thus, in a major battle, an Imperial Great General would not easily move out unless absolutely necessary. But the situation was urgent, so it was understandable that Duwisili could not sit still. Huishu Wizong, Dusong Mangpoj, the 2 of you should go as well to avoid any accidents. Daluan Ruozhen said. Behind him, Huishu Wizong and Dusong Mangpoj grunted in agreement. The 2 of them clamped their horses' bellies, and with a shrill neigh, they shot out of the hills and charged toward the battlefield like dragons emerging from the sea. At this moment, the entire battlefield began to tremble. Duwisili, Huishu Wizong, and Dusong Mangpoj had unleashed a storm of energy that instantly attracted the attention of everyone on the battlefield, including the distant Abu Muslim. The Uzun and the Western Turks have moved out, so it's about time for us to move out. Pass on my order. All soldiers. Abu Muslim's hands pressed against the armrests of his throne as he slowly stood up from a golden throne in the rear of the army, an intense desire to fight exploding from his body. Rumble. At almost the same time, a powerful energy appeared on the high walls of the distant city of Talas and also exploded with fighting intent. As countless Arabs watched, a slender figure wielding a sword in both hands and clad in black heavy armor stood like a god in the southeast corner of the city of Talas, his deep eyes erupting with a light more dazzling than the sun. At this moment, the tens of thousands of Arab soldiers on the battlefield seemed to pale in comparison to this enormous energy, like fireflies before the bright moon. Gao Xinji. Abu Muslim's body trembled, and his body, which had been preparing to step forward, suddenly came to a stop. After more than 2 months of fierce battle, Abu Muslim was already very familiar with this commander of the Anshi Protectorate Army. This was the first person of the Tang dynasty that he had ever admired. Even though they were enemies, Abu Muslim still respected this commander of the Anshi Protectorate Army, whether it was in terms of strength or willpower. Lord Governor. A muscular Arab general stared at the governor of Iron and Blood, waiting for his decision. Inform Ziyad and have him take command. All soldiers, continue the attack. Abu Muslim said as he sat down. He had clashed with Gao Xinji more than once, and it was impossible to determine a victor in a short period of time. Moreover, although he seemed to have the upper hand on the battlefield, Abu Muslim had never been able to do anything to Gao Xinji. If Gao Xinji took the field, there would be no need to continue this battle between great generals, because there was no meaning to it. Duisili. Meanwhile, on the eastern battlefield, behind the second defense line, Wang Chong and his white-hoofed shadow watched as the celestial wolf great general Duisili charged forward like a storm. With a faint smile, Wang Chong urged his horse forward. The celestial wolf great general. This was one of the best great generals of the Western Turkic Khaganate. Although Wang Chong had never met him before, he had heard many legends about him. The celestial wolf great general was one of the formidable foes around the Tang dynasty. Even his martial arts and fighting style had been analyzed in the apocalyptic era, used as material for Wang Chong's promotion to war saint. I'm really looking forward to it. Wang Chong smiled as he continued to push forward. To his left and right, Su Kui and his ballista army were rapidly advancing. Volley after volley of arrows blotted out the sky. Wang Chong's strategy was quickly showing its effects. The encircled Uzun and Western Turkic cavalry were thrown into chaos, and the more than 100,000 Shishi reinforcements were rapidly killing the Uzun and Turkic cavalry. Swish swish swish. Wherever the ballista bolts passed, thousands of Uzun and Western Turkic cavalry would fall to the ground, their blood pooling and the air becoming a bloody mist. Broken weapons and halberds littered the ground. In the distance, the Wushang cavalry led by Li Sai were also actively blocking the Mutri Great Cavalry. Li Sai did not directly attack the Mutri Great Cavalry, instead relying on the 3 layers of the Halo of Dusk Stallion to reach the center of the battlefield first. Scatter them! Li Sai harshly shouted. Swinging his massive sword, he charged at the dense ranks of Uzun and Western Turkic cavalry, the rest of his army following closely behind him. Kill! Countless warhorses neighed as Li Sai led the 5,000 Wushang cavalry in a charge, using their advantage in speed to charge back and forth. Not even the Celestial Wolf cavalry were a match for the Wushang cavalry, much less these ordinary cavalry. Screams and the rumbling of horses toppling to the ground filled the air. In just a few moments, all the Tibetan and Turkic cavalry near the dividing line had been routed. It's the Wushang cavalry. Let's go. They're too strong. We're no match for them. Get out of the way. Don't block the way. Ugh. In the face of the 5,000 Wushang cavalry in the 10 charges 10 victories formation, the area around the dividing line fell into chaos. All of the cavalry formations were gone. In the face of the powerful attacks of the Wushang cavalry, many of the Uzun and Western Turkic cavalry panicked and wanted to flee, but they were blocked by the endless stream of soldiers behind them. Bastard! These scoundrels are too despicable. At this moment, the most enraged were the Mutri Great Cavalry that had been obstructed by the chaotic army. The Mutri Great Cavalry commanders were fuming. They had been a little slower than the Wushang Cavalry, but this little bit had caused the Mutri Great Cavalry to lose the initiative. With at least 5 or 6 armies in front of them, the Mutri Great Cavalry would not be able to break through the encirclement of the Tang dynasty unless they killed the people in front of them. Strike! No matter who it is, kill anyone who gets in our way. Suddenly, a cold voice rang out. It was Huaba Senji, who was sitting on his horse, leaning forward. His eyes flickered with a cold light. He had finally spoken at this moment. Bang! His voice was still ringing in everyone's ears when an enormous black silhouette shot forward like a bolt of lightning, slamming into a Western Turkic horseman in front of it. With a massive boom and the neighing of Ney's horse, the Turkic horseman and his horse were thrown 10-some meters into the air. Boom boom boom. Without the slightest hesitation, Huaba Senji's stellar energy surged as he and his horse charged forward. In a hail of collisions and screams, Huaba Senji threw another 5 or 6 horsemen in front of him into the air, sending them flying more than 100 feet into the air. Everyone was dumbfounded by this sudden development. Chapter 9:25. Bang! After a momentary silence, the panicked horseman finally realized that Huaba Senji was not joking. He even dared to kill his own people, much less the Western Turks. Everyone's faces were filled with terror as they screamed and fled in all directions. All of you, get out of the way. Anyone who disobeys will be executed. Huaba Senji's callous voice resounded over the sky. As one of the imperial guards of the Uzun Empire, Huaba Senji had a strict command over imperial great generals like Dusong Mangpoj and Hushu Wuzong. Dusong Mangpoj and Hushu Wuzong would never kill their own people, but the imperial guards were different. However, the royal city guards were different. One of the important duties of the royal city guards was to slaughter rebels and deal with the disloyal and ill-intentioned royal warriors. Throughout history, as the 4 great royal lineages of the Uzun Empire grew stronger, many people had begun to covet the authority of the Tsenpo. In order to protect the Tsenpo and the royal authority, the imperial guards had killed many Uzun people. In this aspect, Huaba Senji was fundamentally different from Dusong Mangpoj and the others. Buzz! Huaba Senji's strategy quickly began to show results. The Uzun and Western Turkic cavalry that had formed an invisible wall in front of the Mutri Great Cavalry began to flee in fear, opening a path for the Mutri Great Cavalry. This Huaba Senji truly is formidable. In the rear, Li Sai swung his sword like the wind, sending a Uzun horseman and his horse flying. He couldn't help but widen his eyes at this sight, finding the situation rather troublesome. This Huaba Senji was far more formidable than he had imagined. His methods seemed callous, but in reality he had only killed a few people. But the effect was immediate. The thousands of soldiers who had fallen into chaos immediately opened up a path for him. Everyone follow me. However, in just a moment, a cold light flashed in Li Sai's eyes. His entire body burst forth with an intense desire to fight. He slapped the back of the horse with his left hand and immediately urged the Fergana horse to charge in Huaba Senji's direction. The Skunda halo could still last for a while. With the support of the halo, Li Sai and Huaba Senji could still fight. Go! Everyone follow General Li. Huang Boshan's furious howl echoed throughout the battlefield. This Wushang village's martial arts fanatic loved martial arts as much as his own life. A fierce and powerful general like Li Sai was exactly what he admired the most. Boom! Huang Batian fiercely punched at the rock erupting from the ground and sent 2 charging Tibetan officers flying. Then he led his subordinates forward. Kong Xian and Hong Yochi also waved their hands and led their troops forward. The Mutri Great Cavalry was extremely powerful. If they were allowed to charge over, Sun Jiming's group would surely suffer heavy casualties. Other than the Wushang Great Cavalry, no one could deal with them. There's no need. Li Sai, Huang Batian, Kong Xian, the 3 of you withdraw for now. Just as the 3 of them were charging forward, preparing to engage in another battle with the Uzun Great Cavalry, a familiar, calm voice suddenly resounded in their ears. At the same time, everyone heard the clattering of hooves. This clattering was different from everyone else's. It was light yet powerful. It was loose yet rhythmic. Moreover, the interval between the clattering of hooves was very long. Such a long gap meant that the warhorse's strides were extremely long. This was definitely not something an ordinary warhorse could do. Swish! The wind whistled, and a young, determined, and dignified figure, riding on a warhorse with snow-white hooves, galloped past the corner of everyone's eyes, catching up to Li Sai, who was in front of him. Marquis! Li Sai, Huang Budin, Kong Xian, and the others' eyebrows shot up as they recognized the figure. Leave this Huaba Senji to me. The rest of you deal with the others. Wang Chang's nonchalant voice resounded in their ears. Before Li Sai and the others could react, Wang Chong had already shot past them like a bolt of lightning, leaving behind a majestic, resolute, and not particularly muscular figure in their eyes. He charged forward with unstoppable momentum toward the blazing Mutri Great Cavalry. You're courting death. Huaba Senji's eyes narrowed. When he saw that the one charging at him was not Li Sai, but the commander-in-chief of the Qixi Protectorate, Wang Chong, his eyes blazed with killing intent and fighting spirit. It was common knowledge that Wang Chong's greatest strength lay in his military prowess, not his martial arts. For Wang Chong to charge forward at this moment, he had come at the right time. If he could kill Wang Chong, the Tang dynasty would collapse without a fight. Roar! Huaba Senji's eyes turned crimson as he roared and swung his scarlet scimitar, stirring up waves of heat. In an instant, he turned into a blazing fireball and led the Mutri Great Cavalry in a charge at Wang Chong. When all the Mutri Great Cavalry charged together like a giant wave, their momentum covered the heavens and earth, unstoppable and unstoppable. On the other side, Wang Chong drew his Wuzi steel longsword with a clang and charged at the Mutri Great Cavalry with an unstoppable momentum. Flame Elephant Rainbow. Great Yin-Yang Art. Vast Universe Art. In the blink of an eye, both Wang Chong and Huaba Senji used their most powerful techniques. The two collided fiercely in the air like two shooting stars. In front of countless eyes, a 10-meter-tall flaming elephant collided heavily with the phantoms of the sun and moon, one yin and one yang. Rumble! An earth-shattering explosion was heard, and a boundless heat wave burst out in all directions. With an earth-shattering scream, Huaba Senji and the 20 to 30 Mutri Great Cavalry soldiers around him seemed to have run into an invisible and sturdy dam. Under the influence of a powerful force, they were all sent flying in all directions. Boundless flames shot through the air, but Wang Chong's clothes flapped in the wind as he remained unmoved. None of the explosions had been able to harm him in the slightest. Countless pairs of eyes that saw this scene were filled with extreme shock. Even Daluan Ruozan was so shocked that he couldn't speak. In the War of the Southwest, he had only witnessed Wang Chong's military prowess. He had never known that his martial arts had reached such a level that not even a brigadier general like Huaba Senji was a match for him. Kill! A series of earth-shattering battle cries came from his ears. Huaba Senji's defeat had not only failed to force the Mutri Great Cavalry to retreat, but it had also stimulated the killing intent and fighting spirit of this most powerful of the Uzun cavalry. Rumble! Tens of thousands of the Mutri Great Cavalry charged at Wang Chong like a massive wave, waving their scarlet scimitars. This was a battle between several thousand of the strongest cavalry and a single person. No one could simultaneously deal with several thousand top-class cavalry of this level. Even Shak Shak had been knocked out of the Saint Martial realm with a single blow and was running around like a stray dog. But Wang Chong only smiled in the face of this massive wave of Mutri Great Cavalry. Buzz! With a flick of his wrist, Wang Chong caused winds to howl in a radius of 50 zhang around him. All the cavalry in this area neighed in fear as an invisible attractive force swept through the air, taking control of these warhorses and forcefully changing their trajectory. Bang! 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 A series of heavy collisions resounded through the battlefield. Before everyone's eyes, Before the Mutri Great Cavalry could even get within 50 zhang of Wang Chong, they seemed to be controlled by invisible threads and crashed into each other. The warhorses whinnied and collapsed to the ground, kicking up a cloud of dust. In the blink of an eye, the area in front of Wang Chong was littered with corpses of the Mutri Great Cavalry. This scene was so sudden that the Mutri Great Cavalry in the rear were unable to stop in time and crashed into each other with muffled thuds. For a moment, the area 50 zhang in front of Wang Chong was in complete chaos, with almost no Mutri Great Cavalry standing. The Great Yin-Yang Heaven Creation Art. After absorbing all of Wanhapelua's energy and advancing to Tier 7 of the Saint Martial Realm, Wang Chong's control over this supreme art had also deepened. In the entire world, only Wang Chong could control the charge of all the cavalry in a radius of several dozen zhang and manipulate them like toys in the palm of his hand. The battle between one person and several thousand elite cavalry had been resolved by Wang Chong's Great Yin-Yang Heaven Creation Art. Wang Chong was completely calm and composed, not even panting for breath. But even though he had achieved this inconceivable feat, Wang Chong did not strike while the iron was hot and kill the Mutri Great Cavalry. His eyes flashed as he turned in another direction. There, a godlike figure mounted on a divine steed, his body exuding a fiery storm of energy as he shot toward him. "Brat, I didn't think you had this kind of ability. But no matter how high your martial arts are, Talas will be your burial ground today." Duisili's voice rumbled like thunder, suffused with a lofty and domineering aura. "Nay!" Duisili's steed neighed and reared up, charging at Wang Chong from several dozen zhang away in an inconceivable manner. In the light of the morning sun, it was impossible to see Duisili's face, only the black silhouette of Duisili and his steed. Chapter 926. Celestial Wolf Great General Duisili. His fighting power was so terrifying that it surpassed Biting Protector General and Sishun. Even amongst all the great generals of the world, Duisili was considered one of the strongest experts. In his life, he had killed countless experts, and there were few great generals in Talas who could match him. Even Anshi Protector General Gao Xianji would have to fight him with all his might. In the face of Duisili's full-strength attack, everyone on the battlefield paled. "Marquis! Careful!" In the rear, Li Sai, Huang Batian, Kong Xian, Hong Youqi, and the others all cried out in alarm. Even farther away, Wang Yan, Wang Fu, Zhang Ke, Cheng Qianli, and Gao Xianji all grimaced. "Not good. Duisili isn't Wanhapeluo. Wang Chong is no match for him." Standing on the high walls of Talas, Gao Xianji's heart sank as he saw this sight. Although Gao Xianji had not interacted much with Celestial Wolf Great General Duisili, he was well aware that this was one of the top 3 great generals of the Western Turkic Khaganate, and few people could surpass him. Although Wang Chong appeared to be so powerful that even a brigadier general like Wanhapeluo was no match, he was still not a great general. There was a fundamental difference between great generals and martial artists below the great general level. Gao Xianji had not expected Wang Chong to attack Duisili at a time like this. Even if he wanted to stop him, it was too late. "It's over." Gao Xianji's heart sank. Wang Chong's military prowess was far more outstanding than his martial prowess. This could be seen from how he had discreetly laid down a massive encirclement right in front of Daluan Ruozan, trapping the 60,000 Uzun and Western Turkic cavalry. Wang Chong's military skills were extremely valuable to the Battle of Talas, and they were exactly what everyone needed. If Wang Chong was killed, it would be a huge blow to everyone. Buzz. Just when most of the battlefield's attention was focused on Wang Chong and Duisili, and everyone believed that Wang Chong's life was at stake, suddenly everyone heard a burst of laughter. "Duisili, it's still too early for you to say that." Boom! There was a massive boom that caused the world to sway. In the distance, Wang Chong stood motionless in the face of the rising sun, his black back exuding a storm of energy that was completely different from his thin and small body. Beneath his feet, massive war halos began to vibrate, resonating with the halos of Li Sai, Huang Batian, Kong Xian, Hong Youqi, and the 5,000 Wushang cavalry, all of these halos showing signs of fusing together. Bzzz. A massive boom resounded in everyone's ears, and in the blink of an eye, a four-armed black-armored god more than 40 meters tall rose from the ground, wielding a massive Vajra pestle made of stellar energy that he swung like a storm at Duwussili. Bang! Duwussili had put all his strength into this attack, but Wang Chang's pestle had sent him and his horse flying into the air. Boom! He crashed to the ground in a cloud of dust. Boom! Everyone was dumbstruck by this sight. Huashu Wuzong, Dusong Mangpoj, and even the distant Daluan Ruozan were dumbstruck. They were no strangers to this supreme art that Wang Chong had used. In the southwest, Wang Chang's father, Wang Yan, had also used this supreme art to stop the hundreds of thousands of soldiers of the Mengshi Yusang army. No one had expected that Wang Chong would use the same supreme art, but the god Wang Chong had summoned was completely different from the one Wang Yan had used. The god King Yama formation. On the walls of the distant city of Talas, Gao Xianji's mind trembled as he stared at that massive four-armed god, a thought flitting through his mind. The Central Plains had a total of 10 powerful god-king formations, including the mighty miracle god formation and the Vajra god formation that had already appeared in the southwest. The god King Yama formation was one of them. These 10 formations required the strength of everyone, and all of them were supreme arts that were extremely difficult to cultivate. Moreover, because it required a formation diagram, extreme coordination, the nature of the martial art, and all sorts of other harsh conditions, even the most formidable martial artists would find it very difficult to succeed in cultivating them. In terms of might, the god King Yama formation was ranked in the top 4 among the 10 great formations. However, the difficulty and requirements to cultivate it were also extremely high. In fact, it even surpassed the mighty miracle deity formation and the Vajra deity formation. When Gao Xianji had met the Holy Emperor when he had been promoted to General of the Right Imperial Guard, he had also asked about it. The information he had received was that the god King Yama formation and some other formations had been bestowed to some of the founding families in the early days of the current dynasty. Later, these families had declined, and there was no one in their families who was qualified to cultivate formations. Gradually, the formation was lost over the long years. Even the founding families did not know where the formation diagram had gone, let alone the imperial family. In the Tang dynasty, there were even rumors that the formation diagram of the god King Yama formation had rotted and crumbled over the long years. Gao Xianji had never imagined that this legendary lost technique would appear in Wang Chang's hands. What the hell is going on? Gao Xianji muttered to himself. It would be fine if Wang Chong had used his father's mighty miracle god formation, but he had used a completely different god-king formation. This was not something that could be explained by a family of ministers and generals. But no matter what, Wang Chang's survival was the most important thing. Lu Shi, take over from me, Gao Xianji suddenly said. Yes, Your Excellency. A respectful voice came from behind him. Gao Xianji did not say much and strode down the tower. In the distance, in the center of the eastern battlefield, the battle between Wang Chong and Duwussili had shocked everyone. This was especially true for the massive four-armed black-armored celestial god. Everyone who saw it was dumbfounded, and their minds were shaken. Under the feet of this gigantic heavenly god Yama, all of the cavalrymen were as tiny as ants. The warhorses neighed as if they had been given a huge fright. The charging Mutri great cavalry retreated in panic, their eyes filled with terror. Amidst the neigh, one of the Mutri great cavalry lost control of his horse and crashed into the god King Yama. Rumble! There was a flash of black light, and a huge foot stomped down from the sky. The Mutri great cavalry and his horse were instantly crushed into a bloody pulp. Even the indestructible armor forged from meteoric metal could not withstand the terrifying power of the god King Yama, and it was twisted and deformed by a single stomp. God King Yama really did it. At this moment, Wang Chong and his horse floated in the air. Rings of light vibrated and rotated around his body, resonating with the tens of thousands of Wushang cavalry's halos around him. There was another powerful and majestic power that contained the power of heaven and earth. With him as the center, it permeated the entire god King Yama. At this moment, Wang Chong was the god King Yama. The god King Yama was him. For the first time in this world, Wang Chong was using the power of an imperial great general. The god King Yama. Even though this god King Yama was not complete, when the calamity of the Central Plains had descended, all martial arts had been gathered in one place. Otherwise, Wang Chong would never have been able to see the long-lost god King Yama formation. The formation diagram had been damaged at the time, and even though those seniors and countless martial arts experts had tried to patch it up, including Wang Chong himself, in the end, the god King Yama formation had only been restored to 60 to 70% of its original power. Wang Chong had chosen this damaged god King formation for a very simple reason. Although this incomplete Empyrean god Yama formation only had 60 to 70% of its power, compared to the mighty miracle deity formation and the Vajra deity formation, which required tens of thousands of people to use and required a high level of familiarity and practice over a long period of time, this simplified version of the Empyrean god Yama formation had much lower requirements. It only required 4,000 to 5,000 people to use, and the time required was also greatly reduced. Of the 10 god King formation diagrams, this was the one most suitable for Wang Chong to learn in time for the Battle of Talas. Bastard! On the other side, a cold and furious voice came from the ground. The celestial wolf great general Duisili landed 10 some zhang away from Wang Chong, his face extremely gloomy. Wang Chong's pestle had been a powerful blow, but Duisili appeared to be completely unharmed. But even so, that pestle had ignited Duisili's rage. I truly underestimated you. I didn't think that you would also know a god king formation. Killing intent surged in Duisili's eyes as he gripped the black halberd in his right hand, his knuckles crackling. But even so, you will still die. As he spoke, an azure stream of energy surged out of Duisili's body and into the sky. Stellar energy condensed above Duisili's head, transforming into 7 stars. The centermost star was shockingly the celestial wolf star. The moment these 7 stars appeared, the cape on Duisili's back flapped in the wind, and his aura suddenly swelled, becoming incomparably powerful. Awur! Chapter 9:28. Cloud movement in all directions, heavenly wolf swallows the stars. Duisili calmly sat on his horse and instantly attacked with his halberd. Rumble. Light and shadows intertwined in the void as clouds gathered in all directions. As Duisili's halberd moved, it carried boundless destructive energy and shot towards Wang Chong like a bolt of lightning. In that instant, the void trembled as the shrill howl of a wolf resounded. Duisili's halberd transformed into a gigantic wolf head the size of a mountain. As it howled, it carried a torrent of destructive energy and ruthlessly smashed towards Wang Chong. In the face of this powerful attack from Duisili, everyone couldn't help but feel as insignificant as ants. It was as if they were facing a gigantic mountain that pierced through the sky. This kind of feeling was enough to make every cavalry on the battlefield tremble in fear from the depths of their souls. It was as if they were ants facing the gods. Boom! Just as everyone was filled with fear, Duisili had already become one with his horse. Like a flood dragon, he soared into the sky above everyone's heads and charged towards Wang Chong with lightning speed. Good timing! When Wang Chong saw this scene, he didn't dodge. Instead, his 4 steel-like giant arms converged and swept up 4 torrents of energy that blasted towards Duisili from 4 different directions. Wherever the giant iron fist of the heavenly god passed, the air blurred. Even time and space distorted as black traces appeared. Under Wang Chong's control, this giant heavenly god Yama didn't seem clumsy at all. Instead, it was agile and nimble. Every single strand of energy within the giant heavenly god's body was controlled by Wang Chong with great precision. Without terrifying control and mental strength, it was impossible to achieve this. Boom! Under the shocked gazes of countless people, Duisili became one with his horse and collided heavily with the heavenly god Yama that Wang Chong had transformed into. Kacha! An earth-shattering sound rang out. In that instant, even the skies seemed to have split open. Endless waves of energy swept out in all directions. Panicked shouts could be heard as some nearby Tibetan and Turkic horsemen were tossed into the air along with their horses by the fierce winds, tumbling through the air like fallen leaves. When the others saw this scene, their faces were filled with fear and they all retreated. A battle between great generals was no trifling matter. Carelessly getting caught up in it would only result in death. In the sky, the battle between Duwusilli and Wang Chong was still going on. Bang bang bang. Under countless incredulous gazes, Duwusilli rode on his warhorse. His four hooves did not touch the ground at all. He repeatedly turned around in the sky, attacking Wang Chong without stopping. Every time his body was about to fall, there would always be an invisible force that pulled his body up, so that Duwusilli could always attack Wang Chong repeatedly. It was as if there was an invisible chain that linked him to the god King Yama that Wang Chong had transformed into. The Celestial Wolf's Divine Procession. This was one of the 3 supreme divine arts of the Western Turkic Khaganate. It was rumored that it had been created by a legendary Turkic shaman. When this supreme art was used to its peak, one could be like Duwusilli, soaring into the air with their horse. Their hooves did not even need to touch the ground as if they could fly. Too powerful. He can actually fly. How could this be? This is the strength of a top-class great general of the Western Turkic Khaganate. The abilities Duwusilli displayed left Li Sai, Huang Batian, Kong Xian, Hong Youqi, and all the other generals of the Tang dynasty deeply stunned. They had heard that Duwusilli was the Celestial Wolf Great General of the Western Turks, ranked 3rd in the Western Turkic Khaganate, and had even defeated Sisihun, but only now did they understand just how terrifying his strength was. It was like the laws of space didn't exist at all. This sort of terrifying fighting power was enough to make even great generals of the same level feel the aura of death. At this moment, everyone suddenly understood why even someone as powerful as Biting Protector General Sisihun had lost to him. He might not have the intelligence and schemes of Daluan Ruozan, but his fighting power was enough to disregard many of them. This was a formidable existence who could rely on his own strength to alter the course of an entire battlefield. Boom, boom, boom. Explosions resounded in everyone's ears. Only by truly facing him would one be able to sense just how powerful Duwusilli's pressure was. Duwusilli and Wang Chong's god King Yama were of different sizes, but the result of this battle was that Wang Chong's god King Yama was being forced back again and again. The Celestial Wolf Great General truly is powerful. Wang Chong was using all his skills to fiercely battle with Duwusilli. Duwusilli's strength was something that even the elders of the Tang dynasty had praised and deeply acknowledged. In terms of pure strength, he was probably even more formidable than the Big Dipper Great General Geshu Han. He was publicly acknowledged as one of the top-class great generals of the continent. There were very few great generals who could stand on equal footing with him. But Wang Chong showed no fear in this battle. On the contrary, he was extremely excited. To personally exchange blows with the Celestial Wolf Great General Duwusilli was something that Wang Chong had never even dared to dream of in his last life, nor had he ever had the chance to do so. To any martial artist who had survived the calamity, exchanging blows with such a dangerous great general was something to be deeply proud of. Duwusilli's fighting style was fierce, swift, straightforward, and lethal. Each move exuded the aura of a fatal blow. There were only a handful of people on the battlefield who could stop the Celestial Wolf Great General. This was also why Wang Chong had personally come to stop Duwusilli. Boom boom boom. Wang Chong did not use any of his supreme techniques, nor did he use the Great Yin-Yang art or the vast Heaven-Earth art. Instead, he used the techniques and theories he had learned in his last life to deal with Duwusilli. 70% of the God King Yama's strength was only enough to push Wang Chong from Saint Martial Tier 7 to the level of a low-level great general. There was still a considerable gap between him and a veteran great general like Duwusilli. But Wang Chong's moves were simple and ingenious, each of them perfectly nullifying Duwusilli's earth-shattering strength and techniques. Before Duwusilli had even attacked, Wang Chong had already predicted what his next move would be. Thus, while the battle appeared to be fraught with danger and Wang Chong seemed like he could be heavily injured by Duwusilli at any moment, in reality, Wang Chong was as steady as Mount Tai, not in the slightest danger. The battle between the two seemed intense, but it was impossible to determine a victor in a short period of time. Rumble! As Wang Chong and Du Wu Silly fiercely battled, on the eastern side of the battlefield, the neighing of warhorses could be heard as two powerful energies rapidly approached. Dusong Mengpoj and Huishu Wizong, two Uzun great generals, had also arrived on their divine steeds. Their gazes quickly locked onto Wang Chong. Both Dusong Mengpoj and Huishu Wizong had suffered major losses at the hands of Wang Chong, so they had a deep understanding of his terrifying skill in the art of war. Forget about the others. Kill him first, Huishu Wizong fiercely said. Before his voice faded away, the earth rumbled and the sky collapsed. A huge golden Buddha rose from the ground and appeared on the battlefield. Vairocana Buddha Golden Body Mantra. Without the slightest hesitation, Huishu Wizong used his strongest technique. Although he was an imperial great general, Huishu Wizong's desire to kill Wang Chong far surpassed anything else. As long as he could kill Wang Chong, Huishu Wizong didn't care about his status. Boom! The moment Huishu Wizong transformed into his Vairocana Buddha, he charged at Wang Chong with incredible speed. At almost the same time, Dusong Mengpoj transformed into a massive black Buddha and charged at Wang Chong. Three illustrious imperial great generals had disregarded their status and chosen to kill Wang Chong at the same time. This was an unprecedented situation, and it was enough to show just how much the Uzun and the Western Turks wanted to kill Wang Chong. Buzz! Just when it seemed like Wang Chong was about to fall into a perilous situation and be surrounded, the earth quaked and an enormous energy erupted from behind Wang Chong. Huishu Wizong, your opponent is me. You're an imperial great general, but you're using numbers to bully me, 3 against 1. Don't you think that this is an unfair victory? Anshi Vice Protector General Cheng Qianli's voice came from behind Wang Chong, and before his resounding voice could fade away, a mountainous figure brushed past Wang Chong's shoulder, blocking Huishu Wizong's path. The Supreme Desolation God. In front of Wang Chong stood an enormous god, its body exuding a hazy azure energy. Its muscles bulged like dragons, brimming with power. But the most eye-catching thing was the thick black chains on his body. Those chains were wrapped around the ancient armor, making the horned Supreme Desolation celestial god look extremely mighty and powerful. Not even Wang Chong had imagined that this Vice Protector General of the Anshi Protectorate could use this powerful god formation. Boom boom boom. In the blink of an eye, Cheng Qianli's Supreme Desolation God and Huishu Wizong's Vairocana Buddha began to fiercely battle. Great General Dusong, long time no see. Your opponent is me. At almost the same time, a harsh and dignified voice came from Wang Chong's other side. There was no earth-shaking momentum or the appearance of an enormous god, only a slender figure shooting forward. With a single slash of his sword, he forced Dusong Mengpoj's Black Buddha back several steps and blocked his path. Gao Xianji. Chapter 929. You've come at the perfect time. Let us decide the victor this time. Dusong Mengpoj's cold and firm voice quickly resounded over the battlefield. Gao Xianji said nothing, only used his actions to answer. Boom! Bolts of energy shot out as Gao Xianji cleaved through the air, the vast sword chi pushing Dusong Mengpoj's Black Buddha Tensum Zhang back. But with a howl and a boom, Dusong Mengpoj once more lunged forward. For a moment, the battlefield was filled with booms and shockwaves. Wang Chong against Du Wusili, Cheng Qianli against Huishu Wizong, Gao Xianji against Dusong Mengpoj. The battlefield of Talas was instantly embroiled in a chaotic battle between 6 great generals, rarely seen on the continent. The battlefield was flooded with destructive torrents of energy. But it was still far from over. In the distance, a third golden-armored god appeared on the first defense line with a heaven-shaking roar. Its massive body caused the countless Arabs behind the first defense line to retreat in fright. Countless warhorses whinnied, their eyes wide in fear, some of them even throwing off their riders. But Wang Yan, in his mighty miracle god form, did not take action. He only stared at the distant Abu Muslim, intimidating the Arab soldiers. In this battle, There were only 4 people on the Tang dynasty's side who could raise their strength to the great general level, and Wang Yan was one of them. A battle between great generals was no trifling matter. Intimidation was far more important than actual combat. This was why Wang Yan did not take action. The battle on the battlefield was getting more and more intense. While Wang Chong and Duisili were battling, Li Sai and the others were also battling with the Mutri Great Cavalry. All the Uzun and Turkic cavalry had circled around the area where the 6 great generals were fighting and were charging at the line that Sun Zhiming and Zhuang Jingping had formed. Meanwhile, Xue Qianjun and Su Kui were leading an army of nearly 100,000 soldiers in tightening the encirclement and reaping the lives of the Uzun and Western Turks. Boom, boom, boom. Thick ballista bolts rumbled through the air, and countless Uzun and Turkic soldiers howled as they fell in droves in front of Su Kui's ballista army. In a few short moments, 20 to 30,000 Uzun and Turkic soldiers had fallen on the battlefield, their blood flowing like rivers. "Brat, I don't believe that I can't kill you today." In the sky, Duisili's furious voice thundered over the battlefield. His massive black steed whinnied through the air like a bolt of lightning, attacking Wang Chong's God King Yama from every angle. Countless thunderclouds formed of stellar energy shrouded the sky and accompanied the divine steed. Duisili sat astride his black steed amidst the thunderclouds, the black halberd in his hand thrusting and thrusting. It seemed as light as a feather, but each strike carried with it a mountain-shattering force. As a top-class great general, Duisili's every move was extremely refined, without the slightest excess, and each strike was lethal. But no matter how fast Duisili was, how crafty the angles of his attacks were, or how powerful his attacks were, they were all blocked by Wang Chong's 4 God King Yama arms. Duisili had never encountered such a thing in his life. Wang Chong clearly only had the strength of a great general, the most elementary level, and was still quite a distance away from him. Duisili had even defeated Biding Protector General and Sishun, let alone an elementary great general like him. But even though Duisili had used all of his techniques, he was still unable to defeat this up-and-coming youngster. Wang Chong's strength was not very high, but each of his attacks was perfectly timed, striking at Duisili's weakest points. There were times when Wang Chong would seal off a single attack before he could even use it. Duisili was known as the Celestial Wolf Great General, one of the top 3 great generals of the Western Turkic Khaganate, a powerful existence that even Ishbara Khagan relied on. But in this small battle, he felt like he was being suppressed and unable to use his full strength. Boom boom boom. Destructive energy exploded in the air. Duisili was like a human-shaped behemoth, his fighting techniques so superb that they could make an ordinary great general collapse. But time and time again, Wang Chong was able to easily neutralize them. "Duisili, it's not that I'm looking down on you, but you don't have the ability." Wang Chong's soft laughter rang out in Duisili's ears. In his battle with Duisili, Wang Chong had always been at ease. "Brat, you're truly seeking death by provoking me." Duisili was even more furious at Wang Chong's words. Whether it was age, seniority, or experience, Duisili was not someone that a rising star of the Tang dynasty like Wang Chong could compare to. Duisili had made a name for himself very early on, and his strength was publicly acknowledged to be formidable. He had long since been able to suppress many great generals. Whether it was the Tang dynasty's tiger of the empire Zhangqiu Jianxiong, the Big Dipper great general Geshu Han, or Biding Protector General and Sishun, they were all a little lacking. In the entire Tang dynasty, the only people who could suppress him were Anong Protector General Zhang Shougui and the Crown Prince's junior guardian, the former Tang dynasty war god Wang Zhongxi. If Wang Chong had not defeated Daluan Ruozan in the southwest, defeated Dusong Mengpoj at the Triangular Gap, and killed the Western Turks' Black Wolf Yabguagudulan, Duisili's seniority would have never placed Wang Chong in his eyes. To Duisili, Wang Chong was a true, nameless pawn. "Ha, then go ahead and show me your true strength." Wang Chong's loud voice resounded over the battlefield. Rumble. Wang Chong's God King Yama swung one of its massive black arms to block Duisili's heaven-shattering halberd. At the same time, The god King Yama's other arm swung the Vajra pestle horizontally, stirring up a flood of energy that smashed into Duwisili's Turkic steed. The god King Yama's forearms, which could be used for both offense and defense, were on full display at this moment. Of the 10 gods, the god King Yama was the most suitable to deal with Duwisili. Buzz. Although Duwisili was furious, he was forced to retreat by Wang Chong, his horse and man sliding more than 20 zhang through the air. Even Wang Chong couldn't help but inwardly praise the Western Turks' celestial wolf's divine procession. Truly was profound and profound. This ability to allow a man and horse to hover in the air was almost divine. Even Wang Chong felt a little envious, let alone the others. Alas, when the calamity had come, many martial arts had been gathered together, but the celestial wolf's divine procession art was not one of them. The celestial wolf's divine procession art did not actually allow one to fly through the air. It only allowed one to soar higher and stay in the air for a longer period of time. It was more suited for battle, and part of the ability to soar through the air relied on borrowing the opponent's strength. But even so, the celestial wolf's divine procession art was still marvelous and extremely powerful. The unpredictable changes of the celestial wolf's divine procession art, coupled with Duwisili's valiant strength and supreme fighting skills, were enough to make any great general feel a deep apprehension. If Wang Chong had not gone to block the celestial wolf great general Duwisili, anyone else would have already been heavily injured or killed by Duwisili. The new waves of the Yangtze River push on the old. To think that I thought that the imperial court didn't have enough strength to send him, but now it seems that it was a good thing that they sent him. Anyone else would have found it very difficult to stop Duwisili, even if their military prowess was on par with his. Although Gao Xianji was fiercely battling with Dusong Mangpoj, his eyes had been focused on Wang Chong the entire time. Wang Chong's military prowess was like the noon sun, but very few people knew of his martial prowess. Gao Xianji had originally believed that Wang Chong was no match for Duwisili and that fighting him would be fraught with danger, but now he had completely calmed down. His military prowess was formidable, and so was his martial prowess. Gao Xianji, if you have time to worry about that new Qixi Protector General, you should worry about yourself. In this battle, the Tang dynasty's defeat is assured. From now on, from Longxi to the Tsong Mountains, everything will belong to our Uzun. Just as these thoughts flashed through Gao Xianji's mind, a slightly angry voice came from up ahead. As the voice spoke, Dusong Mangpoj's Black Buddha form swung a massive palm at Gao Xianji's head with the momentum of a thunderbolt. Even though this was not his first time clashing with Gao Xianji was still paying attention to Wang Chong. This infuriated Dusong Mangpoj, who was also an imperial great general, to no end. A fool's ravings. After this battle, I'd like to know if the Uzun still has the strength to fight in the north. Of the 4 royal lineages of the Uzun Empire, only 2 will remain. Gao Xianji faintly smiled. You! Dusong Mangpoj was infuriated. The Black Buddha palm suddenly sped up and slashed at Gao Xianji. Buzz! In the face of Dusong Mangpoj's astonishing attack, Gao Xianji's face was as calm as an ancient well. He slightly raised his sword, and the air rumbled as a majestic bolt of sword chi slashed through the air, as heavy as a mountain. Boom! The air exploded, sending shockwaves of energy in all directions, throwing the corpses on the ground into the air. But in the center of the storm, Gao Xianji stood unmoving while Dusong Mangpoj's Black Buddha took 2 steps back. Dusong Mangpoj's pupils constricted at this sight. Without another word, he lunged forward once more. At the same time, Huoshu Wuzong also lunged forward. Huoshu Wuzong's Vairocana Buddha glowed with a blinding light, its moves bold and unyielding, each palm leaving a massive hole in the ground. Huoshu Wuzong was quite experienced in dealing with the supreme techniques of the god formation. In battle, each move was calm and unhurried, but each step was pressing. But the supreme desolation god of the Anxi Protectorate Army's garrison formation was a completely different experience. Chapter 930. A massive chain of stellar energy slithered through the air, wrapping around the ankle of the Vairocana Buddha, but Huoshu Wuzong snapped it with a palm. In the blink of an eye, a second chain of stellar energy wrapped around Huoshu Wuzong's wrist, and then a third, a fourth. Huoshu Wuzong's fists were like lightning bolts, exploding and burning these chains one by one, and then he stepped forward, pressing toward the supreme desolation god. Vairocana burning body mantra. Get out of my way. Huoshu Wuzong's Vairocana Buddha brought his palms together, and a blazing golden flame exploded between his palms like the sun. Roiling waves of energy stirred up fierce gales that swept through the world, but this blazing attack was forcefully scattered by several punches from the supreme desolation god. Great General Huoshu, with me here, you should give up on your wishful thinking. No matter what, I won't let you cross the line. Cheng Qianli's righteous voice resounded through the world. From the very start, Huoshu Wuzong had been steadily pressing in on Wang Chong, and Cheng Qianli naturally knew what he was planning. Wang Chong was probably a thorn in the side of all the great generals of the Uzun Empire. Whether it was Huoshu Wuzong or Dusong Mangpoj, both of them were doing everything they could to work with Duwusilei to kill Wang Chong. But no matter what, Cheng Qianli would never let them get what they wanted. Wang Chong had led more than 100,000 soldiers from Qixi to reinforce the Anxi Protectorate army. If Wang Chong was surrounded and killed in front of their eyes, it would be a disgrace to the Anxi Protectorate army. Thus, even though there was a slight gap between him and Huoshu Wuzong, Cheng Qianli had never retreated a single step, doing his utmost to stop Huoshu Wuzong. Boom, boom, boom. In the blink of an eye, the two of them were once again locked in a fierce battle. At the same time, in the middle of the battlefield, the battle between Wang Chong and Duwusilei had reached its climax. In mid-air, in all directions, Duwusilei's attacks were exploding. Sun devouring heavenly wolf. Heavenly wolf swallows stars. Sky wolf collapsing mountain. Duwusilei and his horse became one, constantly changing in the sky. All kinds of powerful secret arts were displayed to the extreme by him. But no matter what secret art he used, Wang Chong was always able to predict his movements and block his attacks. Duwusilei had descended from the hills and personally entered the battlefield. His original goal had been to stop Wang Chong's ambush and rescue the 50 to 60,000 Uzun and Western Turkic cavalry, but now, Duwusilei had forgotten his original goal. There was only one thought in his mind: kill Wang Chong. Bastard! I don't believe that I can't kill you today. Celestial wolf strikes the moon. Duwusilei's furious laughter resounded through the sky. As countless people watched, Duwusilei's divine steed shot forward like a shooting star toward the god King Yama. But there was a massive boom. Boom. Duwusilei's full-power attack was nullified by Wang Chong. Duwusilei had only managed to use 70% of his attack's power before it dissipated. Duwusilei, it's not that I don't believe you, but you don't have time. Wang Chong smiled, his expression relaxed. As he spoke, he swung the Vajra pestle at Duwusilei. Buzz! In the blink of an eye, Duwusilei's body moved to the side, easily dodging Wang Chong's attack. Although his strength was greatly reduced against Wang Chong, Duwusilei's strength was still there. Wang Chong's attacks were still very difficult to threaten the Celestial Wolf Great General, who was ranked third among the Western Turks. Brat, what do you mean by this? In the sky, Duwusilei's pupils constricted as he glared at Wang Chong said. Heh! Wang Chong only chuckled, offering no explanation. His gaze swept past Duwusilei and toward the distant hills. In the next moment, as if responding to his gaze, a resounding yak horn sound broke the silence and resounded throughout the battlefield. The sound of the horn caused Duwusilei's face to freeze, an indescribably strange expression on his face. Nearby, Huoshu Wuzong and Dusong Mangpoj also showed subtle changes on their faces. This was the horn for the army to retreat. Although the Uzun yak horn sounded the same to others, it sounded completely different to Huoshu Wuzong and Dusong Mangpoj. This was a signal for them to retreat, and it had been issued by Daluan Ruozan. Great General! Let's retreat for now and fight with them in the future. Huoshu Wuzong said to the Celestial Wolf Great General Duwusilei in the sky. Duwusilei said nothing, his face constantly shifting. He had not expected Uzun's horn to retreat at all. But while Duwusilei was still hesitating, the thousands of Uzun and Western Turkic soldiers below him had already begun to react. Bzz. For a few moments, the entire battlefield was eerily still, and then everyone began to retreat like a tide to the east of Talas. Boom! Boom! Two explosions rang out as Hwashu Wizong and Dusong Mangpoj on Duwisili's left and right sides simultaneously pushed back their opponents, forcing them out of the battle and covering the retreat of the army. Great waves immediately appeared in Duwisili's mind. Although he was extremely unwilling, Duwisili could only choose to retreat at a time like this. Wang Chong was nothing in his eyes, but with Cheng Qianli and Gao Xianji, three great generals of the Tang dynasty working together, he would not be able to deal with them. Without Hwashu Wizong and Dusong Mangpoj's cooperation, he would never be able to deal with Wang Chong with peace of mind. Retreat! Floating in the air, Duwisili waved his hand and finally gave the order to retreat. Rumble! The hesitant Western Turkic cavalry immediately began to retreat. Wang Chong, should we continue the pursuit? Gao Xianji had not pursued Dusong Mangpoj after he had retreated. Instead, his body swayed and he appeared at Wang Chong's side, looking into the distance as he spoke. Gao Xianji's status and seniority in the army were far greater than Wang Chong's. By asking Wang Chong this question at a time like this meant that in terms of strategy, tactics, and strategy, Wang Chong had won Gao Xianji's acknowledgement. There's no need. Wang Chong faintly smiled, unconcerned. Let them go. They haven't lost yet, and with Duwisili's trio in the rear, we won't be able to get much of an advantage. Moreover, strategically speaking, we've more or less achieved our goal. Let them retreat. Daluan Ruozhen truly was formidable. While Wang Chong was fighting with Duwisili, he was still commanding his army, and he had even succeeded in tearing apart Wang Chong's trap and rescuing the Uzun and Western Turkic cavalry. But even so, Wang Chong's Chishi reinforcements had killed more than 40,000 elite Tibetan and Turkic cavalry, and the howls of wolves could be heard all over the battlefield. The corpses of vultures rained down from the sky like a torrential rain. To the Uzun and Western Turkic army of 120,000, this was undoubtedly a massive loss, and they only had 70,000 some soldiers left. Even if Daluan Ruozhen was a man of great learning and wisdom, this army of 70,000 would have very little room to maneuver. In terms of strategy, Wang Chong had achieved his goal. His retreat was truly timely. Otherwise, we would have been able to kill even more Uzun and Western Turks and deal them a heavy blow. Cheng Qianli walked over at this moment, his heart filled with regret as he watched the retreating Uzun and Western Turkic army. If he doesn't want to retreat, it's not up to him. Wang Chong indifferently said, not bothering to explain. Wang Chong's bane of the battlefield halo had been working this entire time, consuming the strength of Duwisili and Hwashu Wizong. If they did not retreat now, they would find it very difficult to do so after a while. Let's go. The only ones left are the Arabs. Without another word, Wang Chong, in his God King Yama form, immediately headed for the first defense line while issuing another order. Li Sai, order the army to retreat and return to the second defense line. At the same time, coordinate with the other armies in attacking the Arabs. This general will go. Li Sai's voice quickly resounded over the battlefield. The first to react was the ballista army led by Su Kri. He had been in the rear with more than 1,000 ballista teams, so he had been the first to reach the first defense line. When the two ballista armies joined together, the power of nearly 3,000 ballistae was on a completely different level. Boom boom boom. Wave after wave of ballista bolts flew through the air like locusts, their plopping echoing over the battlefield. In the blink of an eye, 6,000 to 7,000 Arabs had fallen. 1 wave, 2 waves, 3 waves. Once the numbers reached a certain level, the ballista army's lethality skyrocketed. The appearance of Wang Chong, Cheng Qianli, and Gao Xianji instilled fear in the hearts of the Arabs. Countless warhorses neighed and began to flee. Bong bong bong. The beating of war drums came from the rear of the Arab army. Before Wang Chong's forces had even officially arrived on the battlefield, Abu Muslim had already given the order to retreat, and countless Arab soldiers began to retreat like a receding tide. If Uzun and the three elite great generals of the Western Turks could not defeat the Tang dynasty, the Arabs were even less likely to do so. All soldiers attack. Wang Chong did not let this chance go. The massive God King Yama swung its four arms down. Boom boom boom. Four explosions resounded over the battlefield, and screams filled the air as hundreds of Arab cavalry were pulverized by the God King Yama's immense power. Bloody mist filled the air, and countless severed limbs were scattered across a radius of several hundred zhang. On the path of martial arts, the strength of a great general was completely different from that of a brigadier general. With the power of the God King Yama formation, Wang Chong's every attack had the power to sunder the heavens. Boom! You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.